present with Chair Dalton being out.
Thank you. And just so everybody knows, with Chair Dalton being out, I will be managing the meeting tonight. So we start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. If anybody would like to join me. Thank you. So now we move on to oral communications. I'm going to be looking to Anna and Dina just to help me a little bit tonight since this is my first time.
We do have one speaker for oral communications this evening, and that's Christine Schindel.
And I live in East Encinitas. And first off, I just want to thank you for being on a commission. I've put in for a pay raise for you guys, so I'm hoping that they, take that and take some action. No, actually, I just wanted to impress upon you the importance of what you do and the decisions that you make and the advice that you give to council, specifically with mobility in mind. So when you're doing housing projects, home renovations, whatever you might do business-wise, just always thinking of circulation, mobility, safety. I'm a big walk, bike, transit person. I'm part of an organization called Encinitas Bike Walk, but I'm not talking on their behalf. But I love replacing car trips, and I know a lot of other people do as well. And e-bikes have been a game changer, and I just want to make sure that our planning commission is always thinking about mobility, safety, improving circulation, whatever project you're involved in. So again, I thank you for what you do. Just a really quick plug so that you know, because a lot of people are very concerned about all the e-bikes, especially with school starting up again, big projects that we have on Santa Fe Drive and elsewhere. The city has stepped up and leaned in a really good way, more than any other city in the region. Twice a month, we're doing city cycling classes. They're online, they are not online classes, they're in-person classes, they're on-bike classes, and it's so important. They fill up with e-bike riders, mostly teenagers, with parents, some without parents, but we try to convince them to stay at least for the first hour in the classroom, hour in the parking lot doing drills, an hour out in the community riding together. And it's huge that the city has sustained the program. It used to be once a month, now it's twice a month. And so I just want to give kudos to the city and make sure that you're all aware of it. It's free to residents. There's a bit of a charge to non-residents. We do have some money that they have to put up front to make sure that we don't have high no-show rate. I invite any or all of you to join us if you want to take the class or just observe. Third and fourth Saturdays. So we have one coming up on Saturday. Thank you again for being on a commission.
Oh, I have a quick question can I ask her a question?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to ask questions? Okay. Where do you hold them?
Oh, very good. So Encinitas Community Center, Saturdays from 9 to 12. You go on Park and Rec if you just do City of Encinitas e-bikes, it'll take you to the page that has the registration link. Very easy registration process. If you can't do it online, you could call Park and Rec and do it, the old school way. So we were going back and forth between City Hall and the Rec Center. It's much better to do it out of Encinitas Community Center. So, yeah, thank you for asking.
Thank you. Anna, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
We're now moving on to our consent calendar. We have one item on our consent calendar, and that's approval of the minutes from the August 1st, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
If we could actually hold that up for a correction.
Yes.
Under the roll call section, it has Commissioner Pendergrass as present and absent.
Okay, I will note that, make the change.
Thank you.
With that, thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion to approve.
Thank you. Second? No.
A what?
Second on the motion to approve the minutes from the consent calendar? Are you making, I can make a motion to, I'll make a second.
Yeah, I didn't think I could because I wasn't here.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Will you take the vote, please?
And I have to say no or abstain?
You can participate,
Oh, I can?
yes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Okay, we're now going to move on to our regular agenda item. We have one item here tonight, and that's case number 007016-2024. It's the City of Encinitas, the El Camino Real specific plan, which encompasses 228 acres of commercial corridor along El Camino Real. Are there any disclosures related to this item?
Well, of course, I've traversed it and did the walkabout as part of the task force, so I'm very familiar with it.
Thank you.
And I attended a few of the workshops along the way. Did not do the walkabout, but I did, I think, attend 2 of the 4, 3
Thank
of the
you.
4.
Other than utilizing the area, none.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's probably pretty impossible to live in the city of Encinitas and not have spent a lot of time traveling down El Camino Real and going to the businesses, so I'll just disclose my many years of doing that. For this kind of item, do we move to a staff report? Yes. Okay, thank you. Move to the staff report.
Thank you, Acting Chair Ryan. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Melinda Dacey, the project planner that has been working on this specific plan, and I am the Housing Services Manager in the Development Services Department. This evening, we have Patty Anders, Planning Manager with Policy Planning and Housing, Brooke Peterson, AICP and Principal Charge with Rick, not previously engineering, but they're Rick now. Nick Larkin, who was our environmental lead with Recon, and we have Andrew Prescott, who's the senior transportation planner for doing the traffic component of the environmental analysis and also feedback for the mobility improvements and coordination on that item. So just to provide a little bit of an introduction, the specific plan has been prepared pursuant to City Council direction as described within the staff report. The specific plan will be carrying out the general plan land use element policies LU 65 through LU 68. Part of those policies are described for the community of New Encinitas in implementing a specific plan for that community along the commercial corridor. We do have some information outlined about that in the staff report as well. Part of the updates that will be taking place with the specific plan, if it's recommended for approval, would be a zoning amendment to incorporate reference to the specific plan document, as well as a general plan amendment to update the map for New Encinitas to show the boundary of the specific plan. And part of that, those are also components of our local coastal program, so that also necessitates an update to our local coastal program. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brooke, and she's going to walk through our project process to date and all of the public outreach that we have also done with this project as well.
Thank you. Good evening, Acting Chair Ryan and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We really are excited to be able to present for your consideration the El Camino Real specific plan and mitigated negative declaration. So as Melinda mentioned, I want to provide just an overview of the process that we have gone through over the last 2+ years, almost 3 years, to be before you here today. The project kicked off in summer of 2021, and then we prepared a very detailed analysis looking at the existing conditions along the corridor. We looked at the existing physical conditions and then the opportunities and constraints to inform the preparation of the specific plan. We held a workshop following conclusion or completion of the report. That workshop included presentation of the findings from the opportunities, constraints analysis, as well as solicited feedback from the public on their vision for the corridor and what they would like to see to occur through the corridor. We then also held a roundtable discussion with a number of the property owners and developers within the area. That was to talk about the kind of constraints and opportunities associated with development feasibility and to solicit input on particularly the development standards. The specific plan includes development standards and objective design standards, and we wanted to solicit the development industry's input on that to ensure feasibility. We then held a second workshop to look at design alternatives. We prepared land use plan alternatives for the corridor along with design alternatives and presented that to the public. From there, we selected a preferred design for the preferred plan for the corridor, and then set into preparation of the draft plan. After initial preparation of the draft plan, we then last summer got revised council direction towards the content and the construction of the document. Following the state legislation, both SB 9 and AB 2011, which really affected local control of zoning and land use. The council directed us to remove the mixed-use overlay that had been proposed for the project and to revise some of the boundaries to eliminate and take out the Encinitas Ranch specific plan and the mobile home, and to allow us to prepare a specific plan that more intentionally focused on streetscape improvements. We then prepared the screen check draft specific plan and the mitigated negative declaration that was circulated for public review just this last summer in June and July. During that time, we held a workshop to solicit the community's input on the content of the draft plan and the environmental document. We also held a joint workshop with you and the City Council to get your specific feedback, and then we've made some changes to that document to bring the final draft to you for your consideration this evening. From here, we're asking for your recommendation to City Council tonight. From there, we'll go to Council for their adoption, and from there, staff will need to take it to Coastal Commission. So I want to just touch on the community outreach. There was extensive community outreach throughout the process. As I mentioned, there was 3 community workshops that we held at key junctures and key phases in the project to get their input. There were several pop-up events held to ensure that we were getting the word out as broadly as possible. As I mentioned, there was a developer roundtable to get the kind of stakeholder input from that industry. A couple of you mentioned attending the walkabout that was held to just do a site visit to the corridor and to really get kind of a detailed look at the conditions. And then there was a task force appointed by City Council that then followed and informed staff and our consultant team through the preparation of the document. And as I mentioned, we also solicited your feedback along with Council's feedback at the joint workshop. So I want to just outline the purpose of the specific plan. The specific plan is tended to be provide a regulatory framework to guide development through the corridor. The plan responds to unique conditions that exist along the corridor. It's a very heavily vehicular-oriented and trafficked corridor. There's dispersed strip commercial and just really varying lot sizes and dimensions and proximity and kind of depth. It's surrounded by residential, which we need to take into careful consideration, those neighborhood adjacencies. And then there's a variety of topographical and other natural resource physical conditions that really require us to look carefully at tailored development regulations, standards, and proposed improvements. So the plan includes a set of objective design standards. These are measurable standards intended to ensure that future development is of a quality that meets and fits within the context of the community. It provides for, it guides the development of the building and mass of future construction. And it provides also, we set forth streetscape standards and streetscape improvements in order to really intended to try and promote a more walkable and just altogether multimodal corridor instead of the vehicular corridor that we see today. So with that, I want to just note the changes, can you forward one? The changes that we have made and outline the contents of the specific plan. So the specific plan includes the introduction, which really just sets forth the regulatory guidance and legal support for the document. It discusses the other regulatory and policy documents that the specific plan relates to, such as your general plan and the zoning code. Chapter 2 outlines the community's vision as developed from that first workshop, and it also includes the goals and objectives for the specific plan. Chapter 3 is the land use section, and that's where the development standards and allowed uses, parking requirements are included. Chapter 4 is the chapter that includes the objective design standards, and those standards are across a broad range of topics, whether that be site design, architectural design, landscape requirements, public realm requirements, etc. The mobility chapter, number 5, provides for and sets forth the design parameters for the roadways within the corridor and addresses the pedestrian and bikeway and transit improvements and networks. Chapter 6 addresses community benefits. In this specific plan, we're proposing a community benefits program. This came out of the community outreach. There was a lot of input that we heard related to ensuring that future development really provided a benefit to the community. And so with that, we propose the Community Benefits Program, which provides incentives in response to developers providing benefits to the community above and beyond what's required in the code. Chapter 7 sets forth the public services and infrastructure to ensure that future development has systems to support it from that standpoint. And then the implementation chapter sets forth the administrative requirements and the process for future development to implement the specific plan. So as I noted, I want to just provide a summary of the changes that we have made to the specific plan based on the input we heard both from the public and from you and council at the joint workshop. We heard a lot of input regarding the historical context of the corridor, so we have made some changes in a number of places in response to that. Chapter 1, we've expanded the discussion about the historical context and then particularly the commemorative bells that exist within the corridor. We removed in Chapter 2 just an objective that with the changes in the project boundary, just the location of that objective was no longer relevant, so we removed that. Chapter 3, we added text providing and setting forth a maximum unit average size. This was something added to your municipal code, and so we revised the specific plan to be consistent with that. Chapter 4, we made a number of changes to the design standards. We added preservation of the bells as a requirement. We added language regarding the importance of context-sensitive design in a number of places. In response to input we heard on the importance of street trees and how to provide conditions along the corridor to support healthy street trees, we added language requiring certain certain tree grate extension panels into the sidewalk. Text was added as well to indicate features that must be used and to provide clarity to the standard on exactly how much of a particular benefit or how much of a particular feature was included. And then we also added text to specify that common open space amenities should reflect both the cultural and historic context of the corridor. Changes to the mobility section had to do with the guidance a lot for transit stops. We wanted to ensure that the amenities shown in the specific plan apply both to existing and planned transit stops. And then the community benefits chapter was revised along a number of fronts. We, first and foremost, we eliminated the requirement or eliminated the maximum for the number of points that a project could receive. In an effort to encourage for sale over for rent housing, we added that to the list of community benefits. We provided a greater emphasis on local public art. Public art had been in there as a public benefit or as a community benefit, but we added that local component to it. We added relocation and preservation of commemorative bells as a benefit. We added daylighting of Cottonwood Creek. And then last but not least, just to provide sort of a cover for any other community benefit that might be important, we provided sort of an other category. Just a couple of changes, moving over to the environmental document, just a couple of changes were made to the M&D. In response to public comment regarding safety along the roadway, we updated the discussions to further describe the existing roadway conditions and to specify that the lane widths met Caltrans and NCTD requirements. And then the list of allowable uses had not previously included life sciences, but that was an error, and so we added that back in, and the document now reflects that. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Melinda to present staff's recommendation.
So staff's recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council adoption of the environmental mitigated negative declaration, as well as the adoption of the specific plan amendments to the zoning regulations and the land use element, as well as the local coastal program amendment that would be needed with the specific plan adoption. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
No, I think we'll probably just hold it for discussion.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay, we're going to open the public forum. Do we have any speakers tonight?
We do. We have 3 speakers, and first up is Donna Westbrook.
Donna Westbrook, Encinitas. The last I heard, this was supposed to be a streetscape, not a specific plan, because you could no longer put the mixed use on commercial areas. And so it was made a streetscape. Now, all of a sudden, what staff is bringing back to you is a hybrid. They want to get in as many things that they can put in that they could use as a specific plan instead of a streetscape, and that is not right. Now, if you approve this, you'll be approving a hybrid so that the staff can say, well, we already have a specific plan. You do not. It's supposed to be a streetscape. By the way, the bicycle lanes that they want to put in are like the ones on 101 that the cyclists call the death trap. That's what the city wants you to approve. Do not approve these. They've had over 30 accidents that we can demonstrate of what happened and 1 death. So if you're going to approve this tonight, I would say no. You'd be approving the death trap that's on 101 for El Camino Real. We do not need that. Look at it closely, bring it back if you have to, but make sure you bring it back as a streetscape. Now, the other problem that comes down, and what they're trying to do, is to put in the building, apparently it looks like it, so that they can eventually put in more housing or whatever they want to do on those commercial areas. Number one, we don't need the housing there. We've already gone through this, and you asked a lot of people, they don't want it either. So I don't know what type of a scam, and I will call it a scam, that staff is presenting to you tonight, but don't fall for it. Do not let them tell you that this is the streetscape. It isn't. And if you're going to do a streetscape, you're looking at maybe, I don't know, putting a different type of bus seat in, which is the way they're talking. But what they're providing to you is not that. This is a specific plan where they can just back everything into it, and that's not what the council told them. So please, do not approve this tonight. If you want to have more bicycle accidents, approve what they're telling you to approve, let's say part of it. Don't even do that. You've got 30 people at least on bicycles who were hurt on that death trap that the council put in on the 101. Is that the way we're going to do it from now on? It's not good for El Camino. It has even more traffic. And with some of the, I'll say this, the crap that the city has put it in, it's not working. Thank you. Please say no.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Mitch Felipe. I'm going to decline. Okay. Next we have Christine Schindel.
All right, so Christine Schindler again, East Encinitas resident. So I've been involved in the process all along. I've always understood it as being El Camino Real specific plan. So I went to the business forum, I went to a number of the workshops. I missed the actual walk audit because I wasn't in town. I think the process has been good. The public input, I was like surprised at, like in a good way, surprised at the public input, what people wanted. So they really wanted it to be a vibrant community. I saw where they wanted green space and community gathering and multi-use buildings and repurposing parking areas so that it's not so car-centric. So in the presentation, she talked about a vehicle-oriented corridor, highly trafficked. I don't even know how to say that word. Yeah, it is very car-centric. It is a commuter route. It's a cut-through for many coming outside our community, speeding through our community, getting to I-5. I think anything that we can do to make it more vibrant, make it less ideal for a cut-through, bring it back to the community, make it multimodal. I love that there's enhancements for the transit stops, bus stops. I think that I love the fact, thank you staff, for not using protected bikeway. They used separated bikeway or separated bike lanes. I think if they're designed well, they can work well. I ride my bike on this corridor all the time. I see a lot of young riders and families riding this corridor. So if someone tells you no one ever rides there, no one ever walks there, I'd say don't believe them. Just go out there and look. So I think focusing on that and transforming it so it's not so car-centric. So less parking, better land use. You guys are all about land use. I think there should be housing incorporated. I'm not sure the previous speaker where she heard that like housing doesn't want to be part of it. I mean, I think business drivers, I would hope that they'd want to incorporate housing closer to their businesses because it makes it more vibrant. People spend money. What else? I love that they're going to preserve the bells. Street trees are so important for urban heat effect and for it being more conducive for people to walk, bike, enjoy the environment. I did wonder, I didn't see this, I don't think, in any of the workshops, but there's an existing pathway that is parallel to El Camino Real, Garden View in north. And it may be that, thank you.
Go ahead and finish. Ma'am, you can finish that thought if you'd like. I'm curious about that pathway.
It may be that it's outside the scope of the area because it's Garden View to past Home Depot, up to, I'm not even sure but it's an existing separated DG path. And it's fantastic. A lot of people don't know about it. I'm going to do a community bike ride and a community walk to get people to be aware that it's there. I just don't know how that's incorporated into this plan. But I love it. It's looking good. So thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
Yeah, that concludes our speakers.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close public comment and move to council deliberations, unless I'm missing something. Right. So could I ask staff to put the slide up that had all the different sections of the document? I think that might be helpful for us to have a little bit of a framework, because this is such a big document. I did actually feel a little guilty about killing some trees here, but I did print out the document, and it's very dense. And so I think that maybe starting with this kind of framework as we go through and we talk about this document might help us, so we're not doing a lot of jumping around. And so I would propose, unless somebody else has a better idea, to kind of maybe start at the beginning and see if there's anything people want to talk about, and then kind of just move through the document. Does that work for everybody?
That's a great idea. Let's do it.
All right. So we'll kind of go through that and kind of go by page number 2, so that we all know what we're talking about at the same time. And so I guess we're going to start with introduction. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to talk about just from the introduction section.
I was just wondering, maybe we should talk about the mitigated negative declaration separately?
That's fine. We can maybe do that. Maybe do that after we go through the rest of the sections. Okay. All right. So maybe if anybody can tell me where they're, if looking at the specific plan contents, kind of where their first section is that they'd like to talk about. Introduction, community vision, goals, objectives, land use, development, and regulations. I have a lot in design standards that I'd like to speak about, but if anybody has anything before then, I'd like to kind of start at the beginning and move through the document. Susan?
I'd like to congratulate the team that incorporated community context, because I was really worried at first. It looked like the development could be any place in the country, but adding that information, making it more specific in terms of the context of our community, I think that matches a lot more our community vision. I'm very appreciative of the bike lanes. I use that a lot because I do a lot of little do-it-yourself projects. I'm constantly biking down to Home Depot and back. And I live close to Encinitas Boulevard, so I basically traverse the entire corridor when I do that, since Home Depot is at the Leucadia end. They live in Hain End. So I really appreciate that. And I will say that right now, so many driveways do make it feel scary sometimes. So I'm careful about what time of day I choose to go. I don't go at rush hour, because I don't have to. And my bike is pretty sturdy, so I feel pretty comfortable on it. But I do think that I have a couple questions that I probably should have asked for staff. Are we reducing the speed limit as part of the specific plan because of the bikes?
Not in the specific plan, but I believe one of the state bills that went into effect, there were citywide speed limit reductions that have gone into effect, and that may have also adjusted the speed on the El Camino Real corridor.
Yeah, recent state law allows greater local control over speed limits. So whereas it required speed limits to be set by the 85% of the traffic traveling along the roadway, there's now greater control and allowance by the local jurisdiction. A study does need to be conducted for that, however. So the specific plan is not proposing changes to the travel speeds, but it does set up the opportunity for that to occur in the future based on a future study.
I'm happy to hear there'll be a study on it, and hopefully it will reveal a speed limit reduction, because it's an inexpensive safety measure to reduce speed, and I think it would behoove this project, it would benefit it. As far as the
on page
objectives,
40.
to make it,
Susan?
on this point, I believe that the community vision of having it be more walkable and bikeable, gathering places, all of those things, the support space that was given are very helpful.
Thank you, Susan.
Commissioner Sherrod, I do want you to be aware that on page 40 of the document, in section 2.52, there is an objective M1.2. It says, consider utilizing AB 43 to investigate lower speed limits along local roads that may be more prone to traffic safety concerns, particularly areas with frequent pedestrian or bicycle traffic.
So will we monitor it as far as, I also saw that that the NCTD frequency of the bus service might be increased to as much as every 10 minutes during rush hour. And I'm just wondering, how does that monitoring happen for things like our attorney mentioned, and for things like more frequent service for transit?
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Andrew Prescott with your associates. The bill that we're referencing is Assembly Bill 43, and that enables jurisdictions to designate roadways as safety corridors based on collision history or volumes of pedestrians or bicyclists. Most cities are doing this on a citywide approach currently. You can also reference the land uses if it's a commercial district, for example, and you're just anticipating more activity. So that's likely the way that could be done. I would anticipate the city traffic engineer would probably do some initial speed surveys and additional traffic counts just to support that. But as my colleague said here, that there's a lot more flexibility for the local jurisdictions to be able to set that, whereas before it was, if cars are already driving fast, the speed limit does not get lower. So a lot more flexibility there. Regarding the transit, as part of SANDAG's regional plan, that it includes the frequency improvements during peak commute hours that will reduce the bus frequencies to every 10 minutes. I want to say that's like a 2035 or maybe a bit further out when they're anticipating to have that funding and everything go in, but that is a regional designation, so that should be funded at the regional level there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? So we're actually on number 2, community vision goals and objectives.
I did have a comment, I'm sorry, on page 3, since we're going to try to go
Yes.
in, and I'll try to be brief. But to address those who might not understand, on page 3 of the document today, with the start is the paragraph on June 21st, 2023. I think one of the many purposes of the El Camino Real specific plan was to address the impact of state laws, AB 2011 and SB 6, which allows for residential in a commercial zone. So I think we all knew that El Camino Real needed some attention, but understand that we are trying to get ahead of the mandates from the state so that we can have some kind of control over the development of housing, and having a specific plan like this, having design objectives, design standards, and mobility plans in place allows us some modicum of control as a city and a city government to be able to try to make sure that it looks like what we want it to be as best as we can. So I just want to make sure that people understand that that is one of, in my understanding, of one of the reasons why the El Camino Real specific plan got started.
Thank you, and I'm just going to add, I'm going to go a little bit further back in the document against this framework, and I just wanted people to know that we are not actually voting today to approve this document. We're making a recommendation to City Council to approve.
And just adding on to what Bob Prendergast, Commissioner Prendergast was saying, the reason that we need this specific plan is that for the streetscape and the potential of other developments, the existing general plan wasn't adequate. It didn't address community wishes for things like safer and less car-centric transit. And so things like having paseos or plazas or places where we can have seating, connectivity with our walkways. I have seen the one by Garden View, and it is quite a lovely little walkway, and I biked on it before. But it is a little tricky getting on it right now. So some things about this plan are to make it work for the development that we know is inevitable with our own control.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything in section 2 that we haven't discussed yet?
I would just make a general comment. Just I thought the historical context that was contributed to the document when it's just very much goes a very long way in improving the look of the entire thing throughout, even when discussing design standards, mobility, those types of things. The artistic aspects and those contributions, I think, did a lot to bring more of the community to the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, anything else in section 2?
There was a reference to, thank you, there was a reference to the minimum, I think this came from our joint session. This is on page, trying to stay within the guidelines here, let's see. About 50% of the community benefits. Chapter 6, maybe we should just wait till it was just in the document before chapter 6, so I guess I'll just wait till chapter 6. So
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. So I guess we're going to move on to section 3, land use and development regulations. Does anybody have any specific topics they'd like to discuss in that section?
Hang on, it's a big document.
I'll give everybody a couple minutes if everybody wants to take a moment.
Thank you. What page, since I'm in this RM, what's RM? Hang on a second, I guess I gotta get to the right. I should have done it your way. I should have killed the tree and done it with I tried to be good with.
I'm going to try to flip through real quick and find the page number for you.
All right, thank you.
Section
I'm on
2.
2.4, community vision. There's a list of objectives. And one of those objectives is RM3, air quality.
Page 39.
I've got 41 of 283.
Okay.
In this section, generally speaking, anybody can answer. It's just really more a question. Where are the references to the tree palette and the drought-tolerant plant requirements to improve our air quality? It talks about improve multimodal facilities and improving air quality, decrease gases. Where do we reference the requirements for, obviously, carbon sequestration as part of our climate action plan? Can you help me with the cross-reference associated with this section? And is this the right place where it goes? It's what popped into my head when I read it.
So it's in chapter 2 of
Okay.
the specific plan. So RM objective RM-3.2, which is on page 42 of the staff report,
Right.
page 19 of the specific plan. It states that required development within the El Camino Real specific plan area to be consistent with the City of Encinitas Climate Action Plan. That climate action plan is kind of where all of those climate-related goals and objectives live as a separate document from the city.
So by approving the specific plan, we're approving the connection between the documents with the statement. Got it. Thank you. All right, that was. Okay, I'm up to page 51. If anybody has anything.
Anybody have anything before page 51?
So on page 51 of the document, under the 3.4 development standards, there is a chart on the right-hand side of the column, table 3.2, floor area ratio and building heights. So there's office professional, general commercial, and public, semi-public. So where is, or maybe I've missed it, the whole reference to mixed use? I'm assuming my definition of mixed use would be residential in a commercial zone.
So with the council direction to remove the mixed-use overlay, that removed all reference or proposed plan towards mixed use. The underlying zones of commercial then apply. So what that sets forth is for future development, should it be residential, would have to invoke state law in order to occur. So the plan as is does not put forth or set forth plans for mixed use.
Okay, I understand that, but it seems to be inconsistent. I'm not going to argue with what the city council directives are, but that seems inconsistent with the premise associated with like page 3 of the entire project, which is to make sure that we have design standards for housing in a commercial zone. So, please.
If I might, I think the reason they removed it was because in our general plan right now, mixed use has specific criteria, and we didn't see that as applicable in this particular case because the mixed use that's in the general plan would be completely different. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have multifamily housing above it, I don't believe was allowed.
If I may, just to clarify, so we are implementing the municipal code, so if a housing development would come in pursuant to housing legislation, they would be subject to all the development standards with the underlying commercial or office professional zone. So we won't have mixed use, but they would just be, if that were to occur, they would be subject to the existing development standards.
I understand the development standard obligations and everything that's, community benefit program, but we're not changing the municipal code. I understand that. The city council's removed mixed use, but we're going to end up with a mixed use project if someone's going to come in with an AB 2011 or an SB 6 or in a future state legislated mandate. And so is the intent or the result of this being that if developer would have to come back and present a specific plan of which we would then apply these standards to?
No. So the development standards in Chapter 3 are set forth the standards for existing zoning. In order to provide a tool to the city for future development, whether that is commercial or residential, that is really the precise intention of Chapter 4, the Objective Design Standards. That is really the section which sets forth the standards by which, whether it be commercial or residential, as that residential comes in, those are the standards that development would have to conform and comply with.
So the parking requirements, the setbacks, and all the different things that are identified would be required of the developer if they were to come in and try to build residential on a commercial zone.
Correct.
But it's not mixed use. Meaning the project at the end of the day is a mixed-use project, but it seems to be, I don't understand why. If you took the Home Depot and put an apartment building on it, which I know the Home Depot is not part of this, that's a mixed-use project by definition, kinda. I mean, but we're saying it's not mixed use. It's a residential project in a commercial zone, and thus covered by our guidelines in the specific plan. Okay,
Okay, thanks, Bob.
thanks.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything in section 3 before we move on to the design standards in 4?
Computer turned off.
I'll give you guys a couple minutes.
Thank you.
Well, so
Oh, go ahead.
I guess if it is commercial space, let's say an art gallery, and then above it apartments or condos, the designation on page 51 of general commercial would apply? Is that where it would be?
Commissioner Sherrod, so whatever the underlying zoning would be for the site, the development standards in the specific plan would regulate that. And again, it would only, housing or mixed use would only be permissive under housing legislation. And because the specific plan is no longer has the housing overlay, we are just implementing the municipal code with some minor adjustments to like setbacks or step backs to help be proactive in case additional mixed use or even commercial comes in. We want to be able to get that quality architecture to break up the bulk and massing and make sure there's appropriate interface.
Thanks, that makes it very clear.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Trying to get the right page. Page 57 of 283. This is table 3.4, minimum usable open space standards. Just a general question, are these consistent with other standards within the city, or are these specific to this program, and maybe where did these numbers come from?
These standards are consistent with the municipal code and with the zoning standards. They're applied here to specifically provide for the difference in parcel sizes. We've provided some clarity and some additional standards to account for that.
And could these be changed at this commission hearing? We could say, I'm just throwing something out to make it 10% where it says 5%, or make it 15% where it says 10.
Yes.
Is that in our purview?
Yes.
Bob, did you have a specific suggestion?
No, I was just curious on where they came from and if it's consistent or inconsistent, but it looks like we've just applied other standard codes to it, that's all. I mean, I didn't really dive into it too deeply, but it just seems like this was an opportunity that maybe I missed, that I could have been a little more detailed.
Okay, thank you.
My next one's on page 58.
Okay, 58.
58.
Wait, Beck, still on page 57, I have a question about where the permeable paving would be required. Where is there a requirement? It says the usable open space can include courtyard, plaza, terraces, all of these kinds of things. I'm wondering, do they have permeable paving requirement?
I think that's in the objective design standards, isn't it? That's
Yes,
gonna be
the
in section
design
4.
standards addresses pavement types, and in a number of places, permeable pavement is encouraged, not necessarily required.
Are we not requiring permeable pavement of a certain percentage on commercial in general?
Yes, sorry, that is correct, yes. Just not universally.
Bob, page 58, back to you.
General provisions, statement number 1 reads, all required parking shall be off-street and the same site. This prompted me to think about, the city of San Diego has TODs, or transit-oriented districts, where parking is not required to encourage development and lower costs for developers, specifically for housing. Number 1, does the city of Encinitas have it? I should know that, but I don't, so I'm asking you. And number 2, is it reflected at all in the specific plan where parking would not be required for the development of a residential project?
The specific plan does have parking requirements. In no places are we removing parking altogether. I'm going to let Andrew speak to the legislation that governs what happens or what allows for the complete removal of parking.
Thank you. Yes, the transit priority areas, or the transit priority area districts, I think is what the City of San Diego utilizes. So, and the state law guidance for those to qualify, the designations require either a light rail stop or 2 bus lines with frequencies of 15 minutes or less during the peak hours. I don't think we're going to have that within this area, so that's not really going to, that wouldn't be applicable.
But you did say that in 2035, if it were
I think that's just
funded,
the
then we would have a reduced, we'd have an increased, not a reduced, we'd have an increased stop less than 10 minutes, I think.
Correct. That'd be for, I believe, just Route 309 though, and you need, per state law, it needs two of those routes to be at that.
Okay, so not memorizing the North County Transit District's bus schedule, but you do, because you just referenced Route 309. I think there were referenced multiple bus routes, 334. There were a couple of others. Do you know if those routes are on El Camino Real and if they would be applicable?
I don't believe that those have anticipated headways of 15 minutes that would meet the requirements, no.
So we're really not in a TPA.
Correct.
Got it.
Great,
So
thank you.
we could so if a developer came, requested no parking, that would be inconsistent with the specific plan, but could be approved as a variance.
I'll take that one. So any commercial development or office professional would be subject to the requirements in the specific plan. And I did want to point out that we do have joint use and shared parking opportunities in the specific plan. In terms of parking reduction specifically, that would only be applicable to any housing project that came in, and if they were eligible for that, there's numerous bills and numerous criteria, but if they met one of the criterias of the various housing legislation, they could get potentially get a parking reduction under housing legislation.
Thank you.
Our downtown is considered a transit priority area. Not that we're talking about that tonight, but we do have one.
No, that's an example of one, obviously because of the rail system and probably a radius from the station out as part of the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything before we get to section 4, design standards?
Oh. On page 59, there's a reference. I was just curious. There's lots of reference to car chargers, but there are none, or if maybe staff could show me a reference to an electric bike charging station. So car chargers are required for X number of cars, parking stalls for the project, but is there a city standard, or could we implement a standard request here for e-bike chargers?
That could be added. I think we would be looking for commissioners' direction on whether that would be a requirement in the objective design standards or something that could be included in the community benefits program.
But right now, there's a parking there's a car standard for a number of chargers, and is that in which section? Is that a design standard, or is that under the municipal code?
And it is under the building code. There's a certain percentage that we have to provide certain number of EV charging spaces per our, I believe it's our building code.
Okay, so that's a code issue that can be addressed for bicycles at a different time.
Well, it would be subject, any new project would have to comply with that requirement as
Yeah,
well.
For cars, but,
Yeah.
and you're telling me that we don't have a code for e-bike chargers.
Correct.
Right.
No, but I think what they're saying is if we do want to contemplate that and we want to discuss it,
Right.
there's two different places where it could exist in this document, and one is in the objective design standards and other ones in the community benefits. So if
Yeah.
this commission wants to, delve into that, I'm happy to do so, and I think everybody here would be
Yeah, when we-
interested in talking about that as we get to
we get
objective
to it.
design standards.
Perfect.
Maybe we can see if there's a place where we think it would fit in objective design standards, and then if we find a place that we think it could fit there, we can kind of talk about the more of the nitty-gritty. Or
That
if we
sounds
decide
great.
it doesn't fit there, we can see how it might work or not in the community benefits section.
If I can just clarify, I think the standards would be actually in Chapter 3 under the parking standards, not in Chapter 4 under the
Okay.
objective design standards.
And what page would that be in section 3?
That would be 58 of 283 in Section 3.4.6.
So a bike is considered a vehicle, in your opinion?
It's
Just-
usually in that section where we provide requirements for all types of parking.
Okay. Thank you. Well, why don't we put that on the discussion rather than dive into it now?
Okay,
I
that's
don't have
fine.
a specific proposal, but I was curious on where the document itself dealt with e-bikes and chargers, but now we know where it is, and I guess we'll discuss later if we want to come back to it. So 3.4.6, e-bikes, especially since our community has come up and brought it up a few times.
Yes, and I do have just a kind of a general question. I don't know the answer to it. I only have a hybrid car, not a full plug-in. But does anybody know, does staff know, are any of the EV charging stations, do they have a capability of also having an outlet that would charge an e-bike?
I am not aware of that.
Well, we have 3 e-bikes at my house, and they all use a standard plug, the standard 110. But I'm thinking that as each project comes up, that could be something that is pertinent to that project. So let's say that that project has employees that are commuting via bike, and they would provide outlets for their employees' bikes. Or if it's like the wine tasting place or a market or something, if they find that they have a lot of people commuting by bike to buy goods, maybe they would voluntarily add that. Maybe it could be just a community benefit based on, then that would be a choice, an option from the menu of benefits.
Yeah, so I do want to kind of talk about this later, but one thing I just want to mention, just to put it in everybody's mind, is from past projects that we've approved, we've kind of gotten into conversations with the developers about things we would like them to have, but we don't have any way of making it happen, even though we all agree that that would be great. And so I think that maybe we should think about this a little bit more, because it will give us that tool to get what we want.
I agree precisely. I think it's such a common thing. I get the business benefit, and regarding Commissioner Sherrod's comment, I don't expect the wine shop to put its own charger system. I'm assuming the property owner of the large shopping center would be required to do that. Not putting the burden on an individual, but maybe putting it on the burden of the landlord to do something like that. I mean, I think the codes here that we're talking about are for the landlord, not so much for the individual company who's a tenant in that project. That's their burden.
Yes.
And the landlord who builds the next development.
Just a general question to staff. There's no requirement that existing developments retrofit to add EV charging stations to their parking lots?
The municipal code does have some requirements. There's thresholds on when you're retrofitting an existing building, there's square footage thresholds in which then you need to provide them.
Okay, but that's only if the building's being retrofitted. If it's just a building that's left as it is, there's no requirement.
Correct.
Yeah, just clarify that. I think, say, you pull a permit to do a tenant improvement project on a building. Is it a dollar amount or is it a square footage amount?
It's a square footage amount.
Right.
I mean, there's also the possibility the city might provide an amenity someplace in the corridor of an enclosed structure for bikes that has a pass key with an app, and you pay for your parking on the app. And then inside the parking, there's charging plugs, you know. So I know they have them in Santa Ana because I used to work in Santa Ana. And there was a limit, though. Wasn't possible for me to use it because you could only leave your bike a maximum of 24 hours. And that was based on the vendor that installed that facility. Different vendors would have different criteria. So that could be another possibility. Maybe it would be a city-provided amenity.
Are you thinking of something like a city bike, New York style? I think we went through that with scooters, but that type of function, like a city vendor who's going to put in, is that what you're thinking of? Or just a city-owned charging station? I guess both could work.
Okay, so let's kind of,
Yep.
I don't want to say put a pin on it, but kind of put a pin on it for now and start working through the objective standards. And then I do think we should address this e-bike issue, though. Okay, so we're going to move on to the objective design standards, section 4.0.
What page does that start?
It starts on page 62.
Okay, good. All right.
Yes.
I would like to say on page 66, thank you for referencing the urban forest management plan.
Okay, so I have my first on page 63, and this is in site design 4.41, number 4. I noticed it says development should incorporate activated internal paseos, and I would suggest that be changed to shall. So a lot of what I did is go through the document, not just with ideas of questions I had regarding content, but I did spend quite a bit of time going through to make sure that the wording is objective and grammatically correct and stuff like that. I guess it's a little bit of my lawyer writing coming out. And during my meeting today with staff, we talked about some of the things that I saw that were just commas and things like that. So I did send a list, you guys know I did send a list to staff today with suggestions as far as cleaning up commas and just things like that. So I just wanted everybody to know that. Does anybody, and then my next is going to be on page 69. Does anybody have anything before that?
66?
Yes. Okay, 66, Bob.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, was everyone in agreement with
With the
the
shall?
Yes.
shall change?
Okay,
Yeah,
Right.
thank
fine.
you. And I'll make sure to ask that as we go through each thing, Anna. Okay, page 66, Bob?
Yeah, under A, the bottom left-hand corner, I got a camera. Let's see here. Whoops. Is there, I guess maybe it's just a macro question, but this is where it prompted me. Is there any requirement for undergrounding of utilities? Anywhere in the document, is that something that we can enforce under a development of reasonable size? Again, I'm not talking about a TI job on a restaurant, but if we're talking a major use change, is there an undergrounding utility requirement?
In our municipal code, there's currently thresholds. I don't know what the thresholds are specifically, but that do require undergrounding when they meet that threshold.
And because they've come up a few times on our affordable housing approvals, and it's a waiver.
Typically a concession, yes.
Did anybody else have anything in 4.42, streetscape and public realm? Susan? I'm only calling you out on that because I know that's an area that's of great interest to you. I'm on page 66. It's a section that talks about trees. It's in constrained streetscape rendering. And you might be fine with the language. I just wanted to double check with you because of your
Well,
expertise. in
I
this area.
understand that, when I read through this, the street trees, and I'm totally happy with that.
Okay.
I think every 25 feet is great.
Thank you. Okay, so moving to page 69, I had questions regarding number 6, enhanced architectural pavements that are reflective of the local environment and community of Encinitas. So I guess my question would be, what does that mean? And I don't know if we want to keep it kind of more vague in general like that, or if we want to define it more. And I was just kind of curious as to what everybody's thoughts were on that.
You bring up a good point. I was thinking of the light, there's a reference here and some figures of light posts. And leaving it like this, I might put in brick and you might put in pavers and the next person might put in concrete. So we're leaving it open for, and I'm not a design specialist, but we're leaving it open for multiple patterns, multiple statements along the way. So we're not going to get the type of pole that we want if we want some sort of consistency with things like this in here. We obviously leave flexibility for the developer to do something, but we could be getting a hodgepodge of product too.
I agree. I think part of keeping it funky is allowing some flexibility in terms of what they do. However, I have one idea, which is that the enhanced crosswalk maybe could be a little bit different than simple rectangles. I mean, maybe a pattern that looks more contextually Encinitas, whether it would be, I'm going to leave that just where I said it. I think as city people go through it, I would love to see, like on 101 Coast Highway, we have some surfboard motif in some places. I think there could be variety.
So do you think it's okay then
That's
to
simple.
kind of leave it open like
Yeah.
this? So people can be a little more creative?
Yeah, because I see it, enhanced architectural pavement. I kind of include decorative patterns and colors in crosswalks as well.
I'd like to ask the traffic person, I think the expert, I think there's probably fixed state laws regarding the hash marks inside of a crosswalk, right? I guess.
Yes, there is different guidance. I believe there's been some flexibility in the type of crosswalk that you can put. It's not totally open-ended, though, in terms of the colors that you could use. Yes, the spacing. And you do want to have it identifiable as a crosswalk. That's good for pedestrians. It's good for vehicles. So some nuances are permitted, but they would definitely need to be kind of on a case-by-case basis.
Something really simple. For example, instead of at the end of the rectangle, it's chopped off, maybe it looks like a surfboard. Something really simple, but still white.
I was just going to note that, on page 75 in circulation parking, 4.46, number 3 specifically addresses decorative paving and other features for crosswalks.
Okay, thank you. Is everybody okay leaving the language as is here? I'm okay with it. I just wanted to get
No, thank you
feedback
for
on
bringing it up. I'm good.
I'm good with it too.
Okay, so moving on to the next page, 70, on 8, just that it was missing the word shall, future wayfinding signage shall be made. It's just a word left out. Is everybody okay with adding the word shall?
Sounds great.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
I do have a comment, though, on 6970, starting with
Okay.
number 7, the lighting fixtures. Can we also require that there be make them smart lights. I mean, there has to be some ability for us. Yeah, I'm a big dark skies person. I'm sure many people are also. I know dark skies is an ordinance elsewhere in our municipal code, but can we, is this the place, I guess I'll ask staff, is this the place if we were to make a requirement for a light that goes down versus a light that goes up? Is this where it goes, or did we just rely on city code for that?
We could certainly specify that here. Under B, it addresses the direction and it addresses light spillover. So this could be expanded to address that specifically.
Do you have some language to suggest? Because I would like to, if it's agreeable to everybody else, to put some language in here so we can protect our residents from spillage or whatever.
Yeah, and I'll just further note that it actually does currently say the use of smart lighting technology is encouraged. That could be revised to say required.
I'm also seeing on page 80 that it says lighting shall be sensitive to adjacent land uses and view sheds, and it also says lighting shall be shielded and not spill over onto adjacent parcels.
All right, so the
Thank you.
spillover reference is.
Yeah, it's in 4.4.8.
4.48, okay. Well, then back to the recommendation of requirement. Do you feel that with those issues those comments that were pointed out, that we need to use that language here? It's important to me that it be required. I just don't want light to go off. Smart technology says to me that it's not going to go off in the daytime. That's going to be power. That's climate action plan. That's cost to the citizens. So,
Yeah, I think there's two components that I think you're addressing. So I think the specific plan adequately addresses spillover. If you want to add the smart lighting requirement to address the power usage, that could be added.
I'd be okay with that.
you okay with that?
Yeah. Susan? Brett?
Brett, you
Okay.
I'll leave it to you if it goes in 7A, B, or another place.
I think what she's suggesting is, what we're suggesting is the use of smart lighting technology is required in
Right.
the B section. Just
In the B
adding that word.
Required.
Instead of encourage, required.
Required,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so my next is on the same page, 79, and that's the streetscape furniture. And I would suggest, just for the grammar in the sentence, that it's a consistent or complementary style, material, and color, if you read the entire sentence as a whole. Does that look right to you guys?
Can you say it again?
Yeah, so right now it reads, those three words are in the plural, but I
Oh.
think that the structure of the sentence requires them to be in singular. So consistent with complementary style, material, and color.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody else? What page number? That's on 70? Does that work for you?
On number 8, on page 70,
Yes.
as far as the wayfinding signage, I noticed that we had some older wayfinding signage. It's down close to Cardiff Cook, where the Magic Carpet Ride statue is, and it's shaped like surfboards because it's right at the beach there. So I don't know about the wayfinding signage for El Camino Real, if you're going to go with what theme you're going to go with, maybe Mission Bell style or whatever. But I would like to insert the word contextual signage, contextual wayfinding signage, something so that it doesn't wind up being something that I might see in any city. I really do love our town, and I think we have some unique things about us, and anything we can do to highlight those uniqueness is better, in my opinion.
Okay, so just a question. So it does say in that paragraph that it should be designed to be consistent with any future branding. Do you think that's sufficient, or do you think there needs to be something more? Because I feel like when you say branding,
The word contextual to our culture.
where would you like to put that?
I think need the word.
Okay.
The word contextual.
Where do you suggest
I'd like
it?
to be, I'm not sure exactly where, you might know better where to insert that
Okay,
word,
let me take a
but.
look.
If I can provide a suggestion, I think the first part of that sentence says future wayfinding signage, and we're changing shall be made with durable materials. I think that's an appropriate place to add contextual because that's overarching guidance. And then after that would be subject to the branding that would come out of a separate effort.
That looks
Sounds
good to me.
Great suggestion.
And we have a lot of history for the town that it could be drawn on. I mean, they could be something to do with the flowers growing, or could be something to do with the mission bells, or could be something to do with, steam engine water stop. I don't know, but something that sort of ties together and is consistent contextually.
Right, and I think the suggestion about where to put contextual is good, that staff just made. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Good suggestion.
Okay, so now we're moving on. Is there anybody else have anything on that page on 70? We could move on to 71. So for me on 71, which is frontage zone, 4.43, in the standards 1B, I suggest the frontage zone shall include outdoor furnishings that complement the city and solid street furnishings, removing the S.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yep, that's a good one.
Yes.
And I did have a question. I talked to staff about this today. So under D, site furnishing shall be durable, comfortable, and designed to complement the surrounding architecture. My thoughts, when I first read that, I was wondering what surrounding architecture are we talking about? Are we talking about new architecture? Are we talking about the old architecture? But I think that this corridor is not going to go to all new. There's still going to be existing, and there's going to still be buildings built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 70s, 80s. And so I think it's probably okay to leave it like this unless anybody else has strong feelings, because I think that there does need to be tie-in between the old and the new, understanding that the old is still going to exist.
And another thing that I had said in our joint meeting was made from natural material, such as either wood, stone, or other materials, metal, but durable and natural material. But the thing is that they do have some images within this document further down that show some examples. So I don't know if you go scroll all the way down there and saw them. But I think even adding a couple more examples, maybe that delineate natural material or, wood or stone or, things like that would help.
Are you suggesting that we add some of those words into this paragraph, Susan? Are you suggesting we add some more adjectives into this section?
Maybe some more adjectives here, but also on the images. The images were shown just as images. There's no bubbles with comments, no keyed information for material or anything like that.
So you're thinking natural materials, so like to discourage the use of plastics and other things?
Absolutely would
Okay.
like to discourage plastic and also discourage composite material, which is a horrible product that can't be recycled because you can't take it back apart.
Okay.
Yeah, I wrestled with this because clearly we don't want single-source plastic, but at the same time, recycled plastic is, in the old days, people wouldn't buy recycled paper, right? So what do you do with all the paper until you had a market for recycled paper? If the city is actually going to try to do something on a forward basis, yes, I'd love to be able to do stone. I'd love to be able to do, but at the same time, recycled products is part of our larger responsibility. Might not be my.
I'd have to disagree there. Plastic is plastic is plastic, and it degrades into microplastic, and it's in your body. And that's not good.
Understood. Good point.
Do you guys have some suggestions for us?
I was just going to note page 78, number 9, I think speaks to some of the concerns that have been raised. It says, common open space amenities shall be reflective of the cultural and historic context of Encinitas and El Camino Real, pursuant to any adopted theme for the area. Where possible, the styles, materials, and colors shall emphasize the use of green materials and local designers. And then it points to the examples and the images shown below.
Well, again, the definition of green might include recycled plastic. So if Commissioner Sherrod's point is well taken, that we should discourage the use of plastic, then what is our definition of green? And not to get into the weeds, but do we want to address that?
Well, for my point, I do want to address it. I think that whenever we look at a product, we have to look at the cradle-to-cradle analysis of that product. And the big problem with plastic is there is no good resolution. You can digest it with fungi, and that's one way to get rid of plastic. But it's difficult and expensive process to get rid of plastic. When you dispose of plastic, and all too often it ends up in a landfill, and it deteriorates due to sunlight, pressure, heat, but it degrades into microplastic, and it tends to migrate into the ground. Even plants take it up as they grow, and we eat those plants. And so it goes into us, the plastic. They're finding that microplastics are in our air, our water, and our land. So I'm diametrically opposed to all forms of it, including recycled plastic. The only good use for it would be to digest it and get rid of it completely. But that's my opinion. I'm only one voice on this commission.
No, and it's you bring up some very good points. So if we, and I agree with you, so should we make a statement to encourage or require, or shall we go back to some language here that
Right.
shall be of natural product? Because clearly you can regenerate wood, right? Nice wood benches, and there's, you go up to Fox Point Farms and you see Brian's common area, and that was a big tree that came off Leucadia. It's a big piece of wood. One Paseo has a big piece of wood. There are alternatives that we can require.
Right, we would need to make sure that it'd be consistent with, the other section we were just talking about where it said, use the word green, and
Right.
whatever the definition of that is.
That's a good point.
If we add the word natural after durable, then that would do it. Natural material.
What does staff think about the definition of green, and if we replace it with natural, would that be something that we could do?
We can certainly encourage the natural. I just wanted to point out that on page 71 under D, it does reference the City of Encinitas regional quality standards and regularly maintained. So we do have to consider the maintenance factor as well, and what we're allowed to do from other departments and what can be approved in terms of that. But we can certainly encourage and perhaps add under number D, durable natural materials in that section.
And would that be consistent then through the document?
We would probably need to revise on page 78 as well, but I just want to make sure that we are putting in something that we can actually implement and maintain from the city's quality perspective as well.
I'm wondering how detrimental this would be, because I think we all want a green world. I don't think there's any disagreement with that, but mandating that you have 100% non-plastic, 100% natural, and mandating that for all development.
We banned straws and we've banned
Right,
plastic
but this
bags.
is for all development throughout an entire corridor. I think this is going to be an absolute nightmare to administer.
Well, you would see it, wouldn't
I
you
don't
see it?
think we were saying that. I think we were talking about site furnishings and signage, not every little detail of the corridor, because of the impossibility to actually monitor that would be very difficult.
Right. Talking about
We're
benches.
talking about the
and
frontage zone.
Fronted benches, benches for the bus stop. I know there's going to be NTCD requirements, but we're not talking about someone's wood truss inside their building.
So you may, to that extent, we may want there to be some leeway for exactly that reason. You might have, for example, bus shelters, and we might, but then we're going to get in a fight with NTCD saying that your bus shelter doesn't meet our requirements. And does that mean that we're not going to have a bus shelter as a result? They might just say, hey, we're not going to build that bus shelter, then fine.
In some cases, a bus shelter could be metal with like an open weave on the seat to make it more comfortable. And the roof could be metal.
So I'm not saying that there aren't ways that this can't be done. My concern is that if you have a 100% hard and fast rule, I could come up with a long laundry list of potential exceptions where maybe we might want to have an exception or two. But I think if you have language that says strongly encourage or whenever feasible, just have some wiggle room might be helpful.
Strongly encourage natural resources and strongly discourage the use of all plastics. Can we say something?
Or unless infeasible,
right,
that it needs to be natural, something like that. That means 98% of the time
You're going to get it.
you're going to get it, but that 2%, it just can't be done, then at least you have some wiggle room.
All right, so we have some control. We're not going to have 100% because, again, we have other agencies involved, right?
Correct.
TCD, and there was another one that was in there, Caltrans.
In my experience, when you give a contractor an inch, they take a mile. And so any wiggle room is wiggled over into. And so it's got to be pretty tight language. That's what specifications are about. So.
So I don't think that we can get 100%. So the question becomes, how much can we say to do the best we can to achieve as much as we can? Because I get it, it's hard to say that we cannot be omnipotent about it, any of these, and there's wiggle room on all of them, Commissioner Sherrod, so it's like, okay, how much can we get away with and still get what we want?
Right, let me, before we.
Well, I think, you want to think about this too. How expensive is it to buy like a concrete bench? Concrete bench, pretty inexpensive. How durable is it? Pretty durable. How durable is plastic? It might not be as durable as concrete.
Commissioner, I agree with you. I think the question is, what kind of language can we craft to achieve?
I liked our attorney's suggestion of unless unfeasible. If it's unfeasible, I guess we'd have to maybe even have a glossary to define what unfeasible.
No, I think
Would
that's
be.
fair enough. I
But-
think the language she described.
But I think
is-
that's a good choice of word.
So we could add a sentence immediately after the first sentence. So the first sentence would remain, site furnishing shall be durable, comfortable, and designed to complement the surrounding architecture. Then you could add a sentence to indicate furnishing shall be natural unless it is unfeasible, furnishing shall be of natural
Made of.
material unless it is infeasible to use such materials.
You think shall be made of natural materials?
Furnishing shall be made of natural materials unless it is unfeasible to use such materials.
That works for me. Susan?
Thank you.
And then in the next sentence, street furniture shall meet the applicable City of Encinitas regional quality standards and be regularly maintained. I think we need to add by the owner. So it's clear who has to maintain them. What do you guys think? Because we don't want them to say it's the city that has to maintain what we put in. They put it in their property, they have to maintain it.
No, I think it's a great idea.
It's important, yeah.
All right. Susan? Okay. And then on 2, I think there's a comma missing in the last sentence. It should say, "and public art pieces preferably created by local artists, comma, to facilitate a sense of place and pride." If you read the sentence, I think a comma is needed there. Does everybody agree?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I
That's
agree.
fine. And then in the next one, 3, I think there's a comma needed. It says, integrating office, comma, commercial, comma, retail, comma, and eating establishments, under the new comma rules, with a comma before an and.
I must have missed that memo.
With the new comma rule? There was a whole lawsuit about a comma. You know that, right?
Yeah, this is nerds that became lawyers fighting about grammar.
Yes.
I'm glad I don't have to grade papers anymore.
Okay. My next is on page 73, buffers and screening. Unless anybody has anything on the
No.
document? Okay. So I think in standards, number 1, I think it says public and private areas, comma, and residential and non-residential. I think areas needs to be added in there.
Right.
Yes.
And then as that sentence continues, I need to put my glasses on in a minute. In landscape design, features, building separators, access control, comma, or a change in levels and materials.
Okay.
Okay, does everybody agree?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm totally nerding out on
No, I
that.
love it. Love the detail.
On the commas. Okay, so now is a section that I think I really want to talk about. It's more than commas, and it has to do with, so A, for the screening. If I read A, I read it as a minimum of 2 15-gallon shrubs. Okay? And I think the way I read that is there have to be a minimum of 2 and they have to be 15 gallons. And I don't think that's what we want to say. I think we want to say that they need to be a minimum of 2 and a minimum of 15 gallons.
And is there any reference here? I agree with you. And to further that, is there a reference at all in terms of the size that we're talking about? If it's 100 feet and they only have to put in 2? I mean, how is that referenced in terms of a ratio of area to shrubbery?
And also, it doesn't need to be shrubs, could it also be some kind of tree? I mean, it just says shrubs there, which I think limits it to.
Agreed, that also. But I'm just curious on, I said, what would staff suggest? Is there a ratio of, is there someplace else in the code that talks about the number of trees for the lineal feet involved? I guess that's the question.
We do specify, and I can look for it here, but we do specify the frequency of trees per linear feet, yes.
And that would apply to the buffering and screening section? Is that
Or was that on the frontage?
No,
Isn't
that
it a
was in
different
relation
section?
to street trees along the frontage.
right? So
Yeah.
how do we apply that same ratio to screening?
And do we want that exact ratio, or do we want a different ratio? Because, I mean, we're talking here about buffering and screening areas, which would, I think, typically be smaller.
Well, it's important because it is between public and private areas. So we talk
Right.
about the areas of resident, let's assume,
We might want them closer together, is what I'm saying.
right, and the 15 gallons obviously is a mature shrub, but, you know, if we're thinking about, to me, I always go to the practical application. Let's assume that behind the coals up against the hill where there's residential, they're going to put apartments. Let's just go for it. So if that's the example, do we have enough obligatory screening associated with that based on this statement? I don't
I think
think,
this section has to do with building entrances, though. Entrances to private or residential uses shall be located no less than 10 feet away from public or non-residential use entrances.
that's
And
a
then entrances to private or residential uses shall be buffered. So it's the entrance to the private or residential use, not buffering the entire area between a residential and a commercial? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just at the entry.
Yeah, it's just at the
It's the
entry we're
entrance.
talking about here. So it's smaller. So I guess it depends on how grand an entrance is, right? I guess an entrance is grand, and you need more than,
well, usually
we
they're
want to
pretty,
require more than two.
right.
But I do think we
I'm
need to
pretty happy
rework that sentence.
with the distribution of the plant, that they have the 25 feet for street trees, and here, this is at an entryway, and they're giving options, so maybe it's not a location where a shrub could thrive, right? Because there's not enough light or some other problem, you know? But maybe they have like an overhang or something that's going to just not going to get sun there. I don't know. So they gave A, B, C as the ways that they can have this entrance. What they're looking for here is delineation, an articulated entry, so that we can figure out where the door is.
Right.
How do we get in the building? I think the other landscaping that they've got here, you know, they've, point number 5 on the same page, that using around the garages and so forth. And then they say to cover 30% after the first 3 years. Because the problem with plants, you know, they expand. So we can't get too nitpicky. We have to trust that the landscape plan will be reviewed on a per-project basis by staff.
Right.
So we have to have a little faith in our staff.
Does anybody have a suggestion on A, how to clean it up so it says a minimum of 2, and then and those 2 need to be a minimum of 15 gallons? Like, do we need to make a D and put them into different points?
I don't think so, but if that provides greater assurances, then
Right,
that
because-
could certainly be accomplished.
Because the way I read this, I think it's calling for a minimum of 2 15-gallon shrubs, and they have to be 15, they can't be bigger. That's the way I read this as a common reader to this point, to this A.
So the intent is to make sure that 15-gallon is only a minimum?
Right, I know, so I'm just trying to think of a wording that makes that clearer. Scott?
So we could revise A to say a minimum of 2 plants, no smaller than 15-gallon in size each.
That works. Yes. And do we need to say shrubs? Can we say plants?
I
So
said-
that would include trees?
Yes,
I think
that was
would
my
be-
thought.
Yeah, that's my thought, too. Okay. You guys okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so my next section is the number 2, landscape buffer of a minimum of 5 feet in width and/or a low patio wall. So my question was, I don't know what a low patio wall is, and should there be a minimum of what low means? I mean, are they going to put in a 1-foot low patio wall, and is that really a buffer? So, thoughts?
Unfortunately, a patio wall will not buffer sound. Sound basically is diminished over distance, and that is the only way. The only other way would be to build a sound chamber around the whole building or something like that, something really crazy. But I do think I like, on the task force, or maybe it was on our joint meeting, when Councilman Ehlers brought up green walls as a barrier. And I really like that idea. The only problem with it is that we need something about the maintenance of it. Because otherwise, when, let's say, an animal or a kid decides to go through that hedge and leaves a hole, you've got to repair and replace the plant, right? So I think a landscape buffer, 5 feet in width, on a low green wall, I would say a green barrier. I wouldn't necessarily go with patio wall. I'm not sure why we would say that. Because a low wall is not going to diminish sound. It may help in terms of safety, but so would a hedge. So I would be more in favor of green. More green is better because it helps with sequestration of greenhouse gas. It helps with our water flow drainage. It absorbs rain, provides oxygen for people walking by. Green walls, way better than a low block wall, for example.
If I may just note that later on in that same provision, it specifies that the buffer shall be densely planted, and then it specifies the wall height. So it's not left vague to low as in the first portion. The latter portion specifically notes 4 feet.
But that says a maximum of 4 feet. So the wall somewhere between low and maximum. So I don't think low is a sufficient definition.
I have a suggested edit
Okay.
to just take out reference of the maximum so that the wall height is 4 feet regardless.
Okay, that works. So are we taking out low then too, or?
I think we could line out low patio wall. We could just strike it. If anyone else really dying to keep it, we could, but I would strike it personally.
I'm fine to strike it. I mean, I get it. I guess it's a question of optionality of the homeowner or the tenant to be able to have some level of, if you leave a wall option in, the wall needs to be screened by the maximum 4-foot hedge. So I kind of think leaving the patio wall in, I would take out the word low, but knowing that it has to be no greater than 4 feet, at least if someone wants to put a patio wall in to give themselves some privacy and security, but from a buffer, from a screening standpoint, that has to be screened by a 4-foot high shrub. You get the best of both. The person gets some privacy or optionality, and we also get the green. And if a kid wants to run through it, well then, ouch. We're talking about, this is a buffer between commercial and residential, right? Pedestrian
Right.
safety when maximized visual development, trash standards.
I think we just take out the word low.
And then adjust the word. Do we need to make the change for the 4 feet? Or that's
A
fine.
plant screened wall.
What says the buffer shall be planted with dense shrubs or trees?
Right.
It says that already.
I think that's okay. Well, it does say and/or, so I think.
That's or.
I think.
You're right, it's giving you an option of a patio wall
Or the buffer.
or the buffer.
I think
the
you
plant
can, if you
buffer.
want the wall, you have to put the screen in. I think that's the objective. So maybe the
So
or.
are we going to strike or?
I'll leave that to the grammar specialist, but I think or does it. Take out low and take out or.
Or I guess you could say it may include a patio wall, but not or. The green buffer may include.
I just want to be clear on the intent of what you all are trying to achieve on this one. It sounds like we like the dense landscaping of shrubs and trees.
Yes.
And that's got to be 4 feet. And then it's the heartache with a wall being the only thing that is being provided in this buffer.
Right, and then it could be a low wall.
And it could be a low wall. So I think it's resolved by taking out the word maximum. So it says that whatever goes there has to be 4 feet. So I believe that resolves that piece. And then as far as the patio wall, I'm hearing that maybe you want to incorporate that if you are doing a wall, landscaping must go with it. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's my intent.
How do we make that work, this paragraph?
We have, to try to help facilitate, we pulled up the document, so
Okay,
if you
good.
could, and I hope it's on your screens.
Okay, good.
So you can see the live edits to help make sure we're all on the same page.
So I think that the language of A is a little off still from what Scott said. A minimum of 2 plants that
The
are
wall
that are no
Shouldn't be
smaller than.
required.
Maybe that are no smaller than? That are no smaller than 15 gallon.
Yes, we can take those second plans.
Aren't we saying that the patio wall is an option, optional wall?
Yes, in this one, they can choose between landscaping only or a wall. So what we're trying to achieve is how to incorporate that the wall be landscaped. One suggestion could be stating after 5 feet in width and landscaped patio wall be located adjacent to.
Oh.
That sounds good.
And then we'd have to look at also the last sentence, the buffer shall be planted with dense shrubs or trees. And the buffer, let's see, it's moving. See.
But the original intent was that they don't have to provide a wall. So we're adding expense to the project if we say you have to provide a wall.
No, they can do a
So-
wall with green, or they can just do green. I think is what we're thinking, right?
Correct.
So they don't have to have the added expense of a wall if they just want to go full green. Which I think is fine.
We would need to
Maybe or
strike
comes back,
out
huh?
and leave or in there.
Yes.
a landscape buffer of a minimum of 5 feet in width, or a landscaped patio wall shall be located adjacent to ground level residential units along high traffic streets and intense uses to reduce noise impacts and provide additional privacy and security. So I believe that achieves what you were all looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yes.
How does everybody feel about taking like a little break? Okay. 10 minutes? Putting us back at about, let's say, 8:05. Okay, thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight here at the Planning Commission. No, which one? I love it. I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I hear, I have captions for the,
That's why she's looking down.
Okay, all right. Well, then,
I can.
So you can tell us, Oceanside has.
Oceanside has exactly what she's asking for. So they have storage places for bike parking, whether it's enclosed, secure, you buy a membership. you
The
park
city
your
owns them?
bike. City owns them. They have at least 2. They have one at City Hall, one over by the Coastal Rail Trail.
It's like bike lockers.
That's nice and you can secure
So
your bike.
Oceanside has what you want.
Bike lockers.
They have those at the
Yeah.
transit station, don't they?
Um,
Or the coaster
yeah.
station has those too.
um,
But they don't have outlets, but they do have storage for
But they're
bikes.
not the bike lockers, they're actually like a bike facility. It's,
What?
but what I
Oh, you do?
don't
That's a pretty
know
cool idea though, they have
I don't
outlets.
know if they have outlets. If they don't, they should and will.
But then they had
Let's see.
Yeah.
They were clear, like.
So bike parking, so you would then.
Yeah.
So like if you rode your bike to the train, left your bike here, take the train, come back,
Yeah.
ride your bike home.
UCSD.
Yeah, for me, I was teaching in Santa Ana and,
Yeah, yeah, no, put a lot on it. That's pretty.
so it wouldn't work for me because I would be going home on the weekend. And not teaching Friday.
That's at the transit center, and then they have another one at City Hall.
Yeah.
You know what?
There's a fantastic person in Oceanside who just retired.
Get a picture of that from, Christine, get a picture of that from him and send it to Bruce, send it to the city council and say, in an email, all of them, say, this would be great to have, at the train station. Please, please
And a
consider,
couple other places.
yeah, please consider what your sister city is doing as
Doing
as a
bike-
forward-thinking
Bike
city.
theft, e-bike theft is huge. I work for the DA's office as a prosecutor, and there's so many e-bike thefts. So that would also reduce, people would be really happy to have an opportunity to have their bike locked up and safe.
That's a great idea. Any other good ones?
Yeah, or they have
The
SDA.
bike lockers?
Well, just things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's city-owned. I mean, everybody always hesitates, but what other cities are?
A lot of places done like fixing stations,
Right.
kind of community tools.
There's one in Del Mar, right as you go before Dog Beach. As you're going down the hill, southbound.
Okay.
on-
No, and I see you would also take an
Well,
alcohol.
it's not,
Yeah, no,
but as you go past the brig, and you're going down, there's like a water station for the dog water.
Thank you.
Right before the beach opens up, on the north side of Dog Beach, there's a community bike, tools.
Yeah, I think Long Beach has them.
Yeah.
We could stick it next to the coop. I mean, there's a couple of places, perfect.
Good.
Yes.
Probably gets ripped off.
And occasionally, depending on the location.
Right.
Hypothetically, high traffic area.
Susan.
Well, then Trex should put it on their, front of their,
I appreciate
Around
all
back.
your
Yeah,
time.
all those shops will just like it.
right, well, that's what I'm saying, I'm sure the people that bike
I appreciate you
know that you can swing into Trek and the other bike shops along the way to get it fixed. But that's, I didn't know, that's pretty cool.
So, I mean, especially for like the commuters, like you said.
If you're trying to encourage people to commute, and you're gonna take your e-bike down to the train station,
To school and back.
right?
Okay.
And I know
because I started writing right stuff, but we got a little bit spooked about the opening.
Good about you.
Oh, you got too? Yeah, that was so bad.
So where's a sand egg? So that's City of Oceanside. What would a sand egg one look like? And that was gonna be on coaster stations, right? So that would be Encinitas.
I think so too.
Well, sometimes. I don't think we do.
That could be improved in town. I mean, you know, when you go down and today's
Shannon
and
is
you're
now in
coming
New York.
up on those two gas stations.
Located to New York.
And-
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, just a box.
And those cars that are
Was that,
you
guys don't have an office up there?
No, that is a working remotely situation.
Is it a fob?
Oh.
Electronics, or how?
Oh, okay, so how long has she been out there?
She's just been,
Just.
so she was off last week and
Got it, yeah,
that's her
yeah.
first
Okay,
day
got it.
started.
That makes sense.
Okay.
away for a second.
Technology's like my.
Wow, that's crazy. How come is she originally from there?
No, she, her boyfriend is just started in med school.
So, you know, I mean, like to
So
come
Sand
here.
Egg and Oceanside bike
That would
line.
be the best
Well,
way.
that'll do it.
Yep.
But sometimes we turn at Westlake and go on
Quite a-
road cruising
quite a difference.
because of
City.
that. If I'm with my son.
Well,
She's
I think
adjusting.
there's somebody on our city council that sits on the Sand Egg, the rep, like, hey, get us a freaking box.
And so you guys are fine with her long-term doing that?
I wouldn't say I'm
At the
fine.
station.
Yeah, your stuff.
Am I allowing it?
But
Yeah.
That's a good one.
For now,
poor kid is
we're
so
4 days
lost
into it. We'll see how it
of
goes.
me. Always yelling.
It is hard though because like something like this, you know, she's
EcoFest?
all along.
Right.
Oh, we was with my wife, who's Susan, part of the Sierra Club, so maybe we were
Oh, wow.
EcoFest. That was probably.
Do you know about that?
No, I don't think I've
Thank
been
you for
along.
coming,
Well,
sitting through, you know.
I don't think you guys are on a
grind.
team. 'Cause
Right.
It's actually, we're actually a sub.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But
You go ahead, get some dinner,
massive.
think of us, have a smoothie.
Right.
That's very complex. And she's been on it
Oh.
from the beginning, so to take her out of it at this point would
Right.
be pretty detrimental.
Doing a good job. Liz.
Yeah.
So
Appreciate your patience too.
she was in a pretty good
I
negotiating
don't have as
position.
many.
Right,
people,
right,
but
right.
This is the best way to do it, actually. We're trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, okay.
That would get everybody's chance to say
Right.
something, I guess.
How you doing,
Page is the way to go. We'll print it out next time.
What?
I felt odd, but I mean, I don't know another way.
Well, I made my comments electronically, and I pulled my project office and go over and said, I need to print this PDF with the comments along the side.
Keep me honest.
Yeah. Figure it out.
Really?
Hey, how's mid-city going?
Good, we're all done with existing conditions report, so this one's, we're doing it in like task order phases. Cause it's gonna be,
Interesting.
yeah, project's kind of funded by different sources, so like one funding source covers X, another one covers Y, so
Do you have to do a separate, like,
separate contracts.
I guess I should ask, are all those contracts signed at the same time, or are they like sequential, you finish one phase, you sign a new contract?
Like one of them, they're coming off of different on-calls even. Yeah.
What a mess.
It's interesting. They actually just found out that they got funding to do more mobility work for the later phases. Like they just got that funding.
So does it take, like, does it cost
So far, no. So far, no, but like we haven't known.
They get them all lined up.
I mean, we haven't even known like what our full scope's gonna be for the whole project yet. Yeah, it's-
All right, calling the meeting back to order. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Okay, so I'll just tell you where my next one is, and then if anybody has anything before then, just let me know. My next is on page 80. Does anybody have anything before then? Okay, we'll give you a minute, Bob.
Okay. Let's see, number 9 on page 74. This just really prompted me, the new development shall include trees along the public right-of-way. This prompted me to ask the question on a macro basis. Are there any requirements in the specific plan for green roofs or greenery on the roof, or is that covered under our climate action plan? Roof top white for solar. So new developments in the specific plan, do they have to have green roofs, or is it covered someplace else in a linkage in our code or the climate action plan? Not specifically number 9.
Materials, including green roofs, is not specified in the specific plan. I'd need to defer to staff for the climate action plan or other policy documents. But it's not in the specific plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is in the climate action plan as a requirement. Anna, I'm not sure if you're aware.
No, there's no requirement that says anything has to be a green roof, no.
Anywhere in the city?
No.
Probably not going to get it here.
No.
All right, we'll take that up with the city council. Even not a green roof, but even like a white heat reflective roof?
Known as a
For
cool
load?
roof?
Cool roof, yes, thank you.
No, they are not specified here in the specific plan.
Are there?
I believe you all may have added one to the objective design standards.
I thought, that's why I was
Yeah.
coming back
Yes.
to that. So, but that was an objective design standard for, I guess it was for the city, right?
Citywide.
Citywide.
Yes.
So by guilt by association, are they included here? Or do we have to specifically call it out?
You would have to add it if it was not included. I can look through our objective design standards. If you want to move on to the next one, I can see what we have for.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so my next, I made a little boo-boo and I 3-hole punched on both sides of some pages, so I can't read the numbers on some of the pages very easily. But it is section 4.46, circulation and parking. It's page 53 of the document. It's page
76.
7, yeah, it looks like it's 76. So I just feel like under 5, I think that B, starting with the word utilize, isn't consistent with A and B. And so I'm just looking for a cleanup to make it grammatical between the different paragraphs. Does that make sense? So it's 5, the first one says carport shades, and then the B says a minimum 10-foot landscape, and then C says utilize. So it starts with a verb.
Engineered.
Oh, yeah, engineered pervious pavement treatments such as blah, 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 shall be utilized.
Right, that was.
Something like
was my
that?
quick edit. Or you could say, start off with permeable pavers, porous asphalt, reinforced cross concrete, blah, blah, blah. Shall be utilized to meet city stormwater requirements.
Yeah, the other A and B don't have a shall because the shall's in the 5. The following surface parking design features shall be incorporated into surface parking areas of the development. Carports, shade structures.
So how about this? I'll
Trees.
play around with
Okay.
this and then you move along.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. And then on the next page, where it has the standards, the common open space standards, I just think that the publicly accessible rooftops needs to have an S at the end to be consistent. Do you see that on the H?
I was still on page 74.
Okay, let me just do this. This is just one quick
Oh.
S, and then we'll go back to yours. Do you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Under publicly accessible rooftops.
Tops, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, and so
Well,
Susan?
does that mean usable green spaces? Just kidding. Okay.
On
Oh,
74.
yes, it does mean usable green spaces. Thank you, Bob.
Are you guys
Okay.
good?
Yes.
Okay, so on 74, the last item, under standards, 1F, and it says widen sidewalk with a minimum width of 15 feet for the entire length of the project frontage. Does that mean it has to be decorative? Does it have to be pervious, impervious? Do other standards that apply to it? I can't quite figure it out.
It's not specifying the materials to be used. It's specifying the width and the length.
And the materials to be used are specified in another section, correct?
Yes. I can look for that.
Okay, well, that seems like a lot of pervious pavement, and I'd like to see it be impervious.
You want it to be impervious so that it runs off?
I said it backwards. I'm sorry. I would like to see it be pervious pavement. If it's going to be that, I mean, how wide of the project is it? And then how deep? 15 feet. So it's potentially a lot of pavement.
So I think this is talking about the distinct features in general. Susan, then there's another section that talks about sidewalks and the materials that shall be used. I think this is just
Stating the width.
stating the options that they have for the features, and then, like I said, another section covers what the materials shall be. Does that make sense?
Okay, as long as it's covered. I just wasn't sure the way it's stated because there's no reference.
Right. And other sections talk about, details on the artwork or details about the shade trees and what they need to be. So other sections cover details about others in that list.
Just to add to that specifically, page 71, 1A notes that the frontage zone shall include the combination of paved area for pedestrian mobility using pavers, concrete, stabilized, decomposed granite, and landscaping or planters. So I think that's correlated from, so where you were talking about on page 74, a widened sidewalk along project frontage would be within that frontage zone.
Thank you. So my next one is on, no, that was one Scott's working on.
So I've looked
When did you
at
get
this
back?
a few times. I think it's probably best if we just leave it as drafted.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I toyed with moving some language around, but it works.
You think it's okay?
Yeah.
All right.
And if you wanted to go back to the roof solar, so the items where I found it within the objective design standards, Melinda and Patty, do you mind pulling up the objective design standards so that they can look at the specific language? And I'll go ahead and I'll read it off first. So it's DS 5.5.3. Where I'm finding it is in the tables where there's point systems and there's point values. And there's options of them to choose it. So it's not a requirement, but they can have it in there. So table 5.5.3.
Give me a minute so I can pull it up, please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was just going to read it out loud as you're trying to find it. So let's see. I passed it already. So 5.5.3. Let's see. It says glass, skylights, and reflective materials such as aluminum and plastic should be carefully used. Overhangs, okay, highly reflective mirrored glass or roofing should be avoided was one. And then DS 7.3.4 is the one that I think is most related to what you're looking for. It says, in addition to the standards above, projects shall provide adequate landscaping through a combination of the criteria in the table below. Projects shall earn at least 18 points out of 35 points as provided in the landscape design matrix. And then in the matrix, if you go down to the one that starts with 20, it says 25% to 50%. And it's on the second sheet if you go down. Yeah, so then 25% to 50% of the building roofs are vegetated in order to reflect rather than absorb solar heat. And then it has the two additional options, 50%, 75%, and then that's the point system.
I wish Commissioner Dalton were here just to ask him the design question. So, thank you. Shows the vegetative component, but I was also under the impression that in design that having a roof that was, I think in commercial, white, such that, is there something reference to not just the vegetation, but large rooftops to
Yes,
reduce the heat load?
So I may have written the one, development standard 5.5.3. It said light colors. That's the one I was trying to find. Okay. I guess it's, yes, 5.5.3 references the point system again. And if you go to the table, the very last one, roofs are light colored in order to reflect rather than absorb solar heat.
All right,
That's
so,
the one.
so by default, the design standards are applicable here. So at least we cover vegetation and we cover, they would be scored, correct?
Well, the projects that come before, that are located within this area
Right.
would refer to, I'm not quite sure exactly the language, but they would be subject to the design standards we are creating in the specific plan and not these standards. Is that correct, or do you refer back to these?
We say they're subject to this, but if silent, it would defer back to the EMC. And if there's a conflict, the specific plan would supersede because we created objective design standards.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, they first start with the specific plan standards, and then they're able to come to these guidelines here to use the point system to get additional. If there's a conflict, they can also use the municipal code. If there's a conflict, the more stricter would apply.
We would start with the specific plan, and maybe to clarify, we could just add a reference to the cool roofs as noted in the city's objective design standards, because the specific plan is intended to have its own objective design standards.
Its own. So
Yeah.
if we don't incorporate it, okay, so the quick fix is to, as you just said, reference back, make a specific reference to the design standards.
Or the cool roofs of the design standards, that specific feature, not the entire thing, right? Because that would eliminate the specificity of the specific plan, right? All these have been tailored specifically to the El Camino Real corridor.
Which section would this go in, just so I'm kind of keeping track of that? I feel like we.
That's a good question. I brought it up.
We're looking.
I had read it and it
Right.
prompted me on, page 74, number 9. When it said trees, I thought, about
Right, but-
rooftops.
but it
that's
goes
not
some-
where
but it goes
goes.
someplace
It
else.
goes someplace else. I guess that concerns me a little bit that now we have the city design standards and now we have, what if we have a gap? What if there's something missing, like the roof? I mean, how many other things aren't consistent? I mean, I didn't line it up line for line.
So if I may, just to clarify, on page 82 of the specific, 62. I can't see close with the glasses, but I need him to see far, so my
Hang on,
apologies.
we're all dealing with it. 62, okay.
So just to
Let me-
clarify, the design standards and objective design standards and guidelines of the specific plan do take precedence over the citywide objective design standards. So like we were saying, if we wanted to add, if the commission would like staff to add something, we should add it in specifically so that it is included in the specific plan.
I'm going to have to turn to our attorney. I mean, what I didn't want to do is, create all gaps. And how do I know now that we don't have, I would say, I define this as a gap. I'm just open for discussion. I'm not trying to pound us post here.
So you could do this a few different ways. You heard the recommendation from staff, which is essentially these are the design standards.
Right.
Another completely different way of doing it, and would require a significant rewrite potentially, would be to say, in addition, you also need to meet the design standards of the municipal code to the extent that they are not incompatible. Like if it's possible to do both things, then you could have the municipal code would control. The concern with that is then staff is left in the position that they have to figure out, well, is this compatible or not? Are they additive? Are they duplicative? So I think there was some language at the beginning of this, correct me if I'm wrong, that talked about these are additive, but not with respect to the design standards. There's language in 4.4, but as I recall, there was language in the introduction that talked about this as well.
In section 4.4, in the lower right on page 39 on the screen, it does say that the specific plan objective design standards will supersede and replace the City of Encinitas design standards and guidelines within the specific plan. So I would highly recommend that we don't try to mix the two, because these objective design standards were really tailored specifically to the analysis and of the corridor itself, not just citywide objective design standards. So I think we would lose a lot of the almost 3 years of analysis that went into this to really tailor and create the vision and goals of the specific plan. I'd recommend adding the reference to the cool roof if that's the desire of the commission.
Well, I don't know. It kind of brings up another point, which would come up later on the community benefits. You have a LEED certification as one of the possibilities. Now, LEED certification could include a green roof or not, because LEED, I don't know how familiar people are with it. Many of you are, some of you are not. But a bike rack counts the same as solar panels and LEED in some aspects. So, I mean, I don't know. That's something I was going to bring up when we get to the community benefits, is that maybe we need that language about LEED needs to be looked at a little bit. But anyway, something like a green roof could be part of LEED certification or another equivalent type of certification. There's other green certifications.
If I may, just so we can complete the discussion, because we were talking about the municipal code versus the specific plan, I just wanted to reference page 27 is that reference or that provision in the introduction that specifies that any standard or regulation in this specific plan that differs from the municipal code shall supersede the municipal code. Where the specific plan is silent, the provisions of the municipal code shall prevail as interpreted by the Development Services Director.
That's on page, I know she's getting
27.
27 of 283 or 27
Yes,
of? Okay.
27 of 283.
Okay.
But the objective design guidelines on it, those aren't part of the EMC, correct? They're
The MC does refer back to the objective design standards, but I do agree that specifically referring to the solar light color roof, the vegetated roof, the point system section, maybe specifically can be referenced if that's a desire. I don't know if it's the whole section of points or not.
It could fit well into 4.4.14 energy efficiency buildings. The intent of that section, it's on page 87 of 283.
Alternatively, if cool roofs are really the desired intent, page 80, section 4.4.9 is architectural design. A provision regarding cool roofs could be added there to address that concern.
Mm-hmm.
I think both are options. Commissioner Brett had a good suggestion, but if you feel that is the most relevant place for it to go, fabulous. I'm not going to, where it goes is not as important to me as the fact that it's in there and that it's considered. But what does concern me is the waterfall identified on page 27 of 283, the first paragraph, and maybe my naivete is like, I'm afraid that, are there other situations that I've missed where understanding the waterfall of creating a specific plan with just the guidelines that we have in the specific plan supersede our 35-year-old municipal code? And what if I've missed, a water pipe, or what if I've missed a screening on HVAC on the roof because that's the height differential is different than the municipal code? What I don't want to do is like rewrite the municipal code because I have approved this. So please help me understand.
Absolutely. What it says here is that where it's silent, for example, if one of the items that you missed,
right,
we can go to the municipal code. If there's a requirement in there, we can require it. So that's what this means, and this is very typical for all specific plans, any documents that you provide, that you come up. If it's silent here, then we are able to go to the other documentation to say you are required to comply with this section of the municipal code because it's silent in the specific plan.
Okay, so we have backup for a gap.
Yes, we do.
So if we have backup for a gap, then the design standards are different than the municipal code. I think that's the key. So I've got to put the municipal code as the fallback position. If it's silent, you can go to the municipal code that's 40 years old and tested, and we can solve a problem on a pipe or whatever the issue is.
Correct,
right?
and that was going to explain that. So this section says that, so 4.4 says, the objective design standards, these are 100% of the objective design standards here in the specific plan. You don't look to the municipal code for objective design standards. Everything else that is not objective design standards from the municipal code, unless it's contrary, will apply.
Got it. So the design standards for the city, and we'll just take the roof as an issue and the point scale that went with the roof, it was in the design standards, but it's not in the specific plan standards, correct?
That's correct. And so one thing that I'd like to know is if there's a consensus that cool roofs, the consultant find a location in the specific plan to address cool roofs.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yep.
I would like to.
Okay.
Wherever it's appropriate to put it in, I think it's appropriate.
Great.
Okay. So going back to my little sticky things. I think my next one is on page 80. Does anybody have anything before that?
No.
No? Okay. So on page 80, this is the lighting, 4.4.8 lighting. Standards, all building entrances shall be well lit. So my question was what does well lit mean? And do you guys think that we should have something more specific?
Yeah,
And I'm not an architect, so I don't know what that is.
Commissioner Dalton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's safety. There's got to be something that talks about minimum lighting standards in the municipal code.
And I think staff can help us with this.
I don't know exactly what the level would be. We can look into that, but what you're talking about is the level of lumens, the amount of light.
Yes.
So we would do our research to identify a number of lumens that would be that measurable standard.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
As an alternative, we could also specify the building, the number of lighting fixtures that could be used at an entrance. Any entrance or exit into a building for building code needs to be a minimum of 1 light fixture.
Ooh, that seems like a design issue. I think I'm more concerned about making sure it's well lit, not how many light bulbs make the
Well,
light,
that's just saying it's a minimum, so there has to be one.
right?
So
I think really the state code would
Right.
cover for, foot candles at certain heights and so on.
So one option, rather than relying on lumens and the number of lights, one option could be to have a standard that is essentially something like from the street that it could easily be traversed or, I realize that's not a hard and fast standard, but that's at least some sort of a metric, meaning like it's clearly visible. I'm grasping for language, but something to the effect of, you're not going to trip if you're walking along this particular area. So some standard that a reasonable person could, saying that you're able to walk without substantial difficulty. That's, maybe somebody can do a better job than me on
I
that.
think that perhaps we could rely on the building code because, as Melinda mentioned, that there is a requirement for lighting, and that standard is specified, as Commissioner Sherrod is nodding, in the building code. So it could guarantee the level of appropriate lighting to ensure adequate ingress, egress, and associated safety, and that's one consideration.
So would you suggest just adding in all building entrances shall be well lit as defined in, just so whoever's, using this document for something knows exactly where they need to go in that particular situation?
Yes, as defined pursuant to the California Building Code.
Yeah.
We could add verbiage, if you wanted, that says we won't exceed the minimum requirements of state code for lighting. They have minimum foot candles for different situations.
Okay, so my next section was in 4.49, architectural design. 2, large areas of intense bright white light shall be avoided. And this is the same kind of thing of what a large area is. We talked about this today when I had my meeting with staff, because we have recently approved a project with a large white, an entirely large white building. And so I don't know just how you guys feel about having this and it being kind of vague, but what's a large area? That in that case, the large area was the entire building. It also has
What page
shall
are
be
we on?
avoided. We're on page 80.
Was the large building the VA, the American Legion Hall?
No, the large building is the Greek church apartments
Oh, right, apartments in the back.
to match the
That's right.
church.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, we can leave this. I just wanted to
substantial
thought.
portion. Shall avoid substantial portions of being monochromatic. I don't know. That's all blue, all black. I don't know. Let's see. Chris, I think you're fair because, we talk about we can't have large blank walls without having a window.
Right.
There's, precedent's probably the wrong phrase, but we have design standards that talked about you just can't have like a 50-foot wall without a window.
Right.
So,
Or articulation.
right. So, what would you suggest that we curtail this? You could use a ratio of the property wall size, that
don't know.
50% of the wall?
Susan, do you have any ideas on this as an architect?
We have this covered in the general plan, right? I mean, we have standards.
Not this specifically. I think the concern was that this is not defined and you might have an all-white building, but then if you do limit it, then things like the Greek church, that's their tradition, would be prohibited. So it's a fine line of finding that balance.
Right, but they could come in and ask for a waiver.
If it was housing.
If it was housing.
Right, but the church itself would not be able to.
I mean, but that, the
If they
church
were-
already exists.
Right.
But do we want someone to build a large,
White.
It's just
white commercial building?
Yeah, it's an example we're using, but.
Right.
It's fair.
Yeah.
And it just says shall be avoided, so that's also not objective, really.
Curtailed? Shall be curtailed. Shall
I mean,
be
you know what I'm saying?
limited?
Those are all
So-
those are all.
So what you could do would be to have a mathematical standard that
Right, percentage.
Bob had mentioned, that
Right.
you could say no more than, if a wall is 30%, if it's bright white, then no more than X number of square feet can be bright white. You could limit it based on total amount of square footage. You can do it as a percentage. I can imagine if it's a wall smaller than, I'll make up a number, 500 square feet, we don't care. It's only that the standards would only apply if it's above a certain number of square feet. So if you're going to have some sort of standard, you might say for any wall in excess of, I'll make up a number, 1,000 square feet, no more than, it can't be bright white or something to that effect.
Do we have something in the objective design
What
standards
is
regarding this?
what is the length of wall that we allow in
Yes.
our general plan standard to be continuous without a break?
If
I
I
would
may,
say it would be very similar.
Right, that'd be in the objective design standards.
in the specific plan, we do have, under articulations, we do have limits. If I could point your attention to page 86, we only allow, we require a minimum of 2 elements, architectural elements, to be provided for every 30 feet of the building street facade length. So we do have, again, those specific massing requirements to break up the mass for the specific plan.
But that doesn't prevent them from making all of that white.
White.
No, but the question was if there's any,
Ratio?
yeah, correct. So I
Okay.
just wanted to point out that we have that 30-foot.
So we could say 30 feet. I mean,
And again, depending
60 or,
on what the building size, that's what's hard to find a one-size-fits-all, right? Because if you have a smaller
Right.
building, that's a much larger percentage. Is that an instance where you get more flexibility to accommodate situations like the Greek church? The other consideration is when we are so prescriptive, like the traditional Greek Orthodox architectural style, if we're so prescriptive that we could compromise the architectural integrity of certain types of styles like that, or even Italian different styles, right? There's certain things, so I just wanted to mention that.
How about if we make some statement, if it's greater than 35% of the total square footage, they have to come back and ask for, an approval. We give you up to X percent, to Scott's position, like X percent of the building is a single color. Anything greater than that has to.
Through a use permit, through or
At least
Special.
it puts some box around it. Now, the question is, you can argue, is 30% the right number, or is square feet or lineal feet the right?
Could require architectural rendering and review by planning commission or something like that.
No, that's a good one. I think we just want some control without stopping them from doing it, but without at the same time having a big black or blue or purple color, single color. I think that's a good one. Did you guys come up with that? Did you get anything out of that? I think we're talking about limiting, I guess if it's greater than, is it a percentage, Susan?
I think we want to be flexible because
True.
sometimes maybe there's a reason, like the Greek Orthodox Church is an example where it's all white, except for maybe the dome or whatever. But we could ask for an architectural rendering and design review by the Planning Commission for approval for monochromatic schemes or schemes that are more than 50%
Single color,
a certain color, you know.
or a single color, so it could be purple, blue, green, orange, a single color. It doesn't have to be so specific to white.
So I have a couple potential problems and a solution. One potential problem is sometimes you can have federal trademark or service mark requirements. So for example, under the city of Tempe versus Blockbuster, remember Blockbusters? So they have a blue and yellow ticket, and the city was prohibited from requiring that that blue and yellow ticket be brown because it's blue and yellow. So I don't want us to, you know, if we've got In-N-Out Burger, I don't want them to be forced to paint their building blue because we don't allow white, because that's part of their service mark, I'm assuming.
And their buildings are white, too.
And their buildings are white. Thank you, Anna. I'll give her credit for, okay, I give myself credit for knowing City of Tempe versus Blockbuster, but, you know, just saying. So that's one potential issue. And a second issue might be RLUIPA. Essentially, churches have special privileges that we can't clamp down on them. So again, applicable law. So maybe we could have something like this, that except as prohibited by applicable law, and then in parentheses, e.g. RLUIPA, which is the Religious Institutionalized Persons Act, or service marks, and then close paren. So except as prohibited by law, large areas of intense bright white color shall be avoided, right? I would say prohibited, unless the Planning Commission approves the design for that structure. And then it would continue from there. Does that work?
Yes, I'll ask Chris real quick. Is it just white that you're concerned about, or is it a large panel of a single color?
I think it's bright colors, like bright white, bright pink, bright yellow. Like I could see a series of bright colors, not just white, that could
Right,
be
we're
an
not
issue.
neon, I mean, it's
Right,
not
right.
Miami. So do you say then bright colors? Or, yeah, it specifically says the word white.
Right,
So
I would
do
say
we-
bright colors, I'd
bright
just make it a little.
colors with Scott's comments. How's that? That work? And gives us a little more flexibility, and the developer can still come in and ask for pink.
And argue that their color's not bright.
True, so a couple thoughts are coming to
Okay.
mind. One, approved by Planning Commission through design review, because sometimes if they're not, I can't think of an instance right now of what wouldn't require design review in this instance. However, if it didn't require design review, they would say, what permit am I applying for if Planning Commission's approving it? So through design review. And then, what was my other thought? Large areas of intent. So we're still leaving it up to staff to determine whether or not a large area is a large area.
Oh, I apologize. I would suggest that we have a certain number. I threw out 500 square feet, roughly speaking. A garage is 400 square feet, the floor, if that gives you a size. So I don't know what number you want to go with, but a minimum threshold is, and then anything above that. So it wouldn't apply to something below the threshold would be my recommendation.
I saw something about a percentage, I don't know if it was of a wall or of an entire building. You know, no more than X percent of an entire building be that one color, unless you get it approved through design review.
Oh, I like Scott's idea of 500 square feet, because that at least sets it low enough that they have to come to design review. If you make it 10,000 square feet, then it might be all the projects come in underneath that, and it's 10,000 feet of the wall space, then we start to get in, like, I'm adding up all the square footage of the walls, there's 2 or 3 walls, depending on the building, right?
Okay, so that would be something that would need to be defined as well, because you say 500 square feet, can they say, I don't have more than 500 square feet on this massive building here, or here, or here, but it's,
But added it all up, I'm 500 feet?
right, is it went by adding it up? So that can get a little complex as well.
Single plane or something.
So we could just refer to an elevation, right?
Yeah.
500-foot elevation, because you say it's articulated by 2 feet. I lost the wall, so I think you'd probably want from one side elevation, right?
Yeah, I think that's the goal. I don't think we want a big pink wall or purple wall. I mean, I think it might come down to that, but at least they have to come and talk to us about it. I think it's the single monochromatic.
Like Evans tires, like that. That's what, purple?
It is purple. And that might
Well,
too,
they're-
but
But
just,
they would be an exception though, because all Evans tires are purple, right?
So
What they're trying
staff's
to
made a
do
recommendation
is
towards.
enhance the pedestrian experience. And so I think when we think about enhancing the pedestrian experience, you're walking along, and articulation, variation of form, pattern. They said, for example, 2 different kinds of objects within the field of 30 feet or something. So
How is the suggested language on the screen?
so you're more comfortable with the percentage and keeping the word white. We were going to strike the word white so that we wouldn't get pink walls.
Bright colors. You got bright white colors, right?
You have bright white colors. We'd like to remove white.
Is it bright or neon?
I would say bright.
Just bright. Neon could be a color, right? Is it
I don't
neon?
think so. I
Is
think
it
it's an adjective.
Neon green?
It's an adjective.
Is it an adjective? Okay.
we might not be too happy if it was neon orange for,
But all neon is bright. So
Right.
if we say bright, it's going to
It's an
cover
adjective.
all neons.
It's an adjective, you're right. I'm just looking at the extremes.
Yeah.
So I think we still need to take the word white out.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, was there a consensus there on this language?
Hang on, rereading.
I'm good with
Yes.
it.
So is that 35% of the entire building facade, not one specific portion? So that's the additive answer?
So it looks like it would be on any building facade,
Correct.
the way I read that. So any building facade I'm looking at on each facade,
Right.
it cannot exceed the 35%.
So if I'm looking at 100 square feet, 35% can be green, and then if they went to 36 feet, they'd have to come talk to us. Got it.
And I would also, if they put it in scattered areas on that wall, I would say the cumulative of that in reading this.
Okay.
I think it's good enough. I mean, I don't know 35,
Yeah.
again, not being an architect, but I think at least it makes them come back and talk to us. I think that's the goal. Thank you.
Okay.
So if we're comfortable with this general idea, I think we still have the weasel word of large area. So I think we can change that by instead deleting the word large areas and say, except as prohibited by law, no wall, well,
Just areas of intense? Just
No,
take
area-
out the large and say areas.
you can use the word facade.
okay, there you go. Yeah, that's a good edit. To delete large.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So I just have one more thing on this page. I just think we need an apostrophe S on number 3. Mechanical equipment may be roof mounted but shall be screened from public view through using the structure's basic materials. right? Isn't it
Yep.
possessive?
And I had a quick question here on mechanical equipment, maybe roof-mounted. Going back to design standards, and maybe height limit is, in the design standards that we have here, is the mechanical measured as part of the height? Is it the parapet? Where's the, if the HVAC is on the roof and the top of the roof is 30 feet, and then the HVAC is another 5 feet, how tall is it to our standards? Is it 30 or 35? So I'm trying to figure out if the design standards are applicable to height restrictions. I think, doesn't Prop A have a height restriction that's referenced later in the document?
Yes,
Okay.
looking through the document to see if there's anything.
If I may, in section 3, there's standards regarding building height. We do not specify whether that includes or excludes roof-mounted mechanical equipment. That could be added at your direction.
Well, I just would default to, I don't need to make up a new law. What is the current
We're
design?
silent, then we refer to the municipal code.
Which is?
Well, here's the tricky part, with that we could look clearly at the commercial zones, the residential zones. If something comes in under housing law,
And that's a
that
waiver.
would be whatever that housing law says the height
Right.
can be. But besides that, yes, we would defer back to whatever our municipal code says. I can't recall exactly what it says. None of the sites, I know for R30, there's very specific requirements, but none of these sites
We only
will
have
be.
two R30s.
Right,
so
there's
that's-
only one in this area,
Right.
so that wouldn't apply. But we can look at those height standards as mentioned to see if we can incorporate the R30 mechanical equipment.
Well, I'm, believe it or not, actually trying to figure out a way that units could be built, not trying to restrict the units. So if the height limits are there, I'm just trying to figure out, because this had come up before on, I think, the Maria Hotel, in terms of the height, they got a waiver on the addition that they were going to produce. So my question is, hey, I just want to be clear here, and that if someone who's going to come in not using housing law, not using AB 2011, that we don't poo-poo the project because he's 2 feet over the height limit. I mean,
Because of the HVAC on the
because
roof?
of the HVAC on the roof. So
They would have to design it to screen the mechanical equipment and be within our height limit. They wouldn't be able to exceed our height
So
limit.
right now, it's defaulting to the municipal code
Correct.
under the codes that we already have. So if that's the waterfall from page 1, okay. And the corollary to that, not to be a pill, but the corollary to that is if we actually made it height limit 50 feet here, could we do that also? No?
We could not, and because we are, where we can't increase intensity, and increase heights would be an increased intensity, and that would trigger a vote of the people.
Got it.
And we do say.
That's Prop A, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do say on page 43, specifically for section 3.0, the development standards, that if it is, where directions not provided, the EMC will prevail.
Okay.
So-
So it's, so we don't have to reference it here, it already is there?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
What did you have, Bob?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get to my page. It was the tree requirement. Darn it. Site details, I have to go Control F on this. Where is site details? Page 89.
Okay. Let's see if I can-
All legal lots 10,000 square feet or less in size shall be required to have a minimum of 10% landscaping. And my question is, can we increase that, or is that something that goes back to the code. All legal lots exceeding 10,000 feet shall be a minimum of 15% landscaping. Is that something that we're doing specifically to this this specific plan, or is that consistent with other codes?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I was looking at
Yes,
another
on
provision.
page 89 of 283, under the header site details, number 8, all legal lots 10,000 square feet or less in size shall be required to provide a minimum of 10% landscaping. All lots above 10,000 square feet shall have a minimum of 15% landscaping. So my question is, can we change this to different percentages? That's one question. Second question is, do these percentages mirror any other codes that we have? Or is it just someone dropped them in?
This, that requirement was done as a part of their site design when we did the site walking and just walking the site. And there's a lot of smaller parcels. So that specific standard was developed to accommodate some of the smaller parcels in the corridor. If we change some of those standards, we'd also have to look at the table 3.4 minimum usable open space standards. And I believe that these standards do match the municipal code. But I would have to double check that to be 100%.
Okay, so for default purposes, they match the current municipal code. I guess the question to the panel or the commission is, do you want to change these?
No, I think that doesn't match the municipal code, but I think this is better than the municipal code.
And it sounds like also there was the consensus when they did the walkthroughs too, that you take into account the smaller lots and being able to develop them correctly.
Well, everybody's comfortable with this ratio?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did have one thing on page 87. And I just changing a shall to a should to a shall. It's on 4.4.14, number 1, energy consumption in buildings shall be minimized using the following features where feasible. That's all I have in this section, unless, does anybody else have anything else? I still want to point out, we still haven't found a place for the cool roofs, just kind of, or did we? Okay, you did, okay. And then the other thing we kind of put a pin in was the e-bikes and where they might go, whether it would go in the objective design standards and where it would go. And whether we want to do that now, or do you want to continue going through the rest of the document first? It's, and then come back to that? Okay. Okay. All right.
What page was that? What page, what's the site? The one I was on, I think it was 89. Sorry. I had one more, number 10. Yeah, so back to page 89, number 10. A minimum of 50% of site landscaping shall be drought-tolerant planting to bring interest and beauty to the landscape and support biodiversity to reduce the need for pesticides and excessive irrigation. Once again, question is, can we increase that to 80%? I wouldn't know why a developer wouldn't want to do drought-tolerant given the cost of water, but is that also reflective of other codes? Is that why the 50% is there?
We do have a water efficiency ordinance, and we do condition projects routinely through development projects to be 50% native plants, which are drought tolerant. So we do have that policy in place. So this would be consistent with that requirement.
We also added it to the objective design standards, so it's carried over from there as well.
Are we in a position to change that to a higher number at this?
You can recommend that it be increased if that's what the commission desires.
And my concern about doing that is that it already exists in multiple places at 50%.
True, I guess. I just don't know why someone wouldn't do 100%, just because
That's just a minimum, though.
it's a minimum of, well, we can set a floor, we can set a
Well,
higher
because
floor.
because they want to have their landscape look a certain way.
True, but we live in a desert. I guess it's their responsibility to maintain it. All right, I'll concede, but I think in general, that percentage should be higher. And we live in a place where water, it doesn't rain, and we have nothing at all, it gets imported, so the fact that we actually have a minimum, that's only 50%. I'm not sure why someone would put rhododendrons in, but they could, I guess, according to this. Okay.
Well, I think a more concerning item is that the way that our general code is written, landscaping can be hardscape stuff if it's permeable. Is that correct?
There are some sections that allow especially specific plans where there's a certain percentage that can be permeable pavers and alternative items that count towards the required landscaping, yes.
So in my mind, if we're looking to add green spaces for pedestrians that are walking through, and we're hoping to have a nice oxygenated greenhouse gas reducing environment because we have huge amount of traffic going by in the corridor, the permeable paving doesn't really serve that well, whereas plants do. So I'm concerned about, I think that projects, it shouldn't be in this particular location something that just, oh, I get to decide, I'm the developer and I'm going to put permeable paving instead of plants. I think it should be something that we have a say about so that it doesn't wind up that every project coming through, they don't want to have to do maintenance of plants, so they just put permeable paving.
The permeable paving
And then we
is
don't wind up with the
drought-tolerant.
green.
Isn't it? Isn't permeable paving drought tolerant? I mean, technically. Right. Does it require any water?
There are other sections in the specific plan that require landscaping of like setbacks and frontage zones and buffer zones. So I think those other provisions would limit someone's ability to do like a large portion of concrete or pervious material.
And
But to-
Patty, can you confirm?
Good.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that provision in this specific plan where wherever you have required landscaping, you can count, let's say, 50% of towards permeable pavers or things like that. I don't see that in this specific plan.
We do not have that level of specificity.
Okay, so it's solely landscaping in this particular specific plan, so it does meet what you're looking for, Commissioner Sherrod.
Did anybody else have anything?
No, I think I'm up
Design
to
standards?
community benefit.
All right. Are we skipping through, anybody have anything in mobility before we, 5.0 mobility before we move on? Anyone? No? Brett, anything in there? Okay, so let's go to community benefits. I know Susan had some thoughts here.
I definitely have some thoughts on the for sale housing, which was something that I thought should be added previously. I'm glad that it's shown, but I think that when we talk about for sale housing and for rent housing, something that you have to think about is that homeownership has long been a cornerstone of the American dream. not only because it signifies independence and financial security, but it's a milestone that contributes to economic growth, job creation. It helps the community in a multitude of ways, but it helps the individual family or owner in underserved communities, especially by keeping them engaged in the neighborhood where they live. They might be volunteering for community events, civically engaged. They have a sense of belonging. And there's a whole list of benefits of homeowning. It reduces transiency and homelessness, creates generational wealth building opportunity, provides better community safety, community stability, community connections, investment in community, cultural context, continuity, improved labor market outcomes, better mental and physical health, increased financial and physical health for seniors, reduced rates of divorce, improved school performance and development of children. And I have references for all of those. So I'm wondering, when I see it on community benefits, is our objective, since we have so many projects we've already approved that are 100% rental, that didn't have for sale units, is our objective to keep enriching developers, or is our objective to help people into affordable homes? And there's no legal basis to require units to be for rent. There's no legal basis to require them to be for sale. But it is reasonable to require a mixture that is more in keeping with our existing percentages, so that there is opportunity for ownership by disadvantaged populations as well as offspring of existing Encinitas residents. While wealthy developers often build highly expensive projects and highly priced rentals to restrict wealth building to themselves and their families, it's not really in the spirit of creating affordable housing, is it? And not in the best interest of building connected, stable community. So I'm wondering, homeownership is so important. Why is it just a community benefit? And maybe we might think about it as being a requirement, that we have a mix of rental and for sale, so that we provide opportunities with multifamily housing for ownership, generational wealth building, and all of these other benefits. Thoughts?
So my only thought that is, I think I remember discussing this as being part of community benefits when we had our joint meeting with City Council. And they were okay with it being in this section, and they also were okay with it being 50%. So I kind of feel like maybe City Council has already spoken to this issue, and we're going to be recommending a document for them to approve. So I have some concerns about now moving it from this section or changing the number. But can I ask a different question? And I don't know, maybe I missed this, or maybe it's just late for me. But what are the development incentives that builders get by getting? I don't know what the incentives are.
So the last two sections of Chapter 6 note the two incentives that they can receive. They can receive reduced parking requirements. There's certain percentages provided based on the amount of points. And then the second incentive is streamlined permit processing.
And to the streamline permit processing, is that both time and money that they save?
Correct.
Okay, maybe other people can speak to Susan's now. I just wanted to ask that question before I forgot it.
I'd like to know is what this planning commission is about, developing for rental housing, because that increases our transiency, decreases community involvement. So the stability that we have right now, about 63% homeowners in our community. And it's a lot of why our community is the way it is. If we have a lot more rental housing, it encourages transiency, and I'm just not sure that's what we want to do.
I don't know. I think that if a rental property allows an opportunity for people who can't afford to buy into a community, a place to live in a good community. And I know that a lot of people who rent stay in a particular rental unit for a long period of time or move to another one within the same community because their kids are in school in that community. So I'm not sure I completely buy into the transiency of rental properties in a community such as this, where people choose to live in this community because of the school system and the other amenities that this community offers to people. So I think while that may be true in other communities, it's not as true in Encinitas.
Well, only about 10% of the units are actually affordable, even at rental rates. And their rents can go up for the rest of the 90%. And we have not delivered the very low and low affordable housing that we're mandated to deliver. If someone buys, they can get a fixed rate mortgage, and they know that they are not going to have an increase. They can actually pass that unit on to kids. They can build wealth. So it's a completely different situation.
Wow, it's a big issue to unpack. I think as a planning commission, I see myself, Commissioner, trying to, if for sale housing, which we have here is number one, but we don't have maximum points granted, so we have to kind of fill that box out, obviously. I think that, Pyrea's Point, which came before the Planning Commission, was for sale. Fox Point Farms is for sale. There's a lot of market dynamics associated with building product for sale. There's also laws associated with liability for condominium sales that are, at the moment, cost prohibitive. But clearly, as the market ebbs and flows, rentals or for sale product tend to be market driven. I think as a city or a planning commission, if we want to encourage for sale housing, then we have to find ways to incentivize, as much as pains me to say that, but the reality is, if we want to incent someone to build something that's not consistent with market forces, then that's how we do it. So there is a trend at the moment in our industry to build more for sale product, but that takes time. I guess what we can do here is you can try to mandate it, and what we've done here is incent people by giving them points to reduce their cost by saying that we get 50%. So some people might say that's a high factor, to build 50% for sale product just to get the points. Question is the cost-benefit analysis. Is it worth doing that, or should I be able to just use the other points that are granted and not build the for sale product? So you almost have to make it an incentive for them to do the 50% for sale. So if you want to encourage it, then you give them maximum points so they can save money and build the product. So,
Agreed.
That's my thought. So if you really want for sale housing product under the current market dynamics, you're going to incent them to do that, then you have to give them the maximum points granted. That's how I would answer community benefit option number 1.
Would give them 60?
On, yeah, page 6.1, or menu 6.1.
Yep.
And also the question on a macro basis, the community benefit option, what is the, didn't mean to go on a rant there. I wanted to answer Commissioner Surratt's questions. So what is the goal of all these different points add up to what? I'm sorry, and I know you had the table. Can you bring the table back up again? So if I get 100 points, or whatever is it a total point scale? And if I get X number of points, we'll just say 100, where would I fall within the table?
So at council's direction, we took out a maximum that one could accumulate.
Okay.
So there's really not something in terms of going through the table where you're limited on what you can accrue or accumulate.
Right.
You then would simply,
Let's just say I come up with 150 points. What does that get me? How do I benchmark that against the table 6.2? Is that what I get? No, not 6.2, that's the parking
if you had
requirements.
150 points,
Yep.
then you could, depending on which use you have, you could trade that in, right? So you'd get, for 60 points, you would get the 15% reduction.
So
Is that answering your
where's,
question?
You would
is that,
never,
is
you
that
would never
table
need to
s-
get 150 points. The maximum you would ever really need to get is 90.
Correct. No, it is 60.
60
60
plus-
points would get you a
plus-
15%
plus
reduction
plus
on your
30 for
office
this-
professional.
Oh, I see.
Can you
Right.
also use 30 and get the streamlined as well, though? So the
Yes.
maximum anybody would ever try to get is 90, I guess is
Correct.
my point.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
additive?
So I'm wondering about, so I'm wondering if these points granted are too high,
Right.
because people are going to be incentivized to do very many of these.
Right, because one gets you,
Right,
One
one
gets you
gets
there.
you so much. One gets you the parking, all the parking, like
right.
like EV charging station gets you the entire parking reduction. So I'm wondering if we want to incentivize people a little bit more than that.
Or incentivize them by doing multiple community benefits.
Right, that's what I
Make
mean,
it-
like lower the numbers.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So has there been any studies on your team, based on looking at historical projects that have been submitted, to know that the ratio of points or the amount of points granted per community benefit has been achieved? Or how do we come up with some of these numbers, I guess?
These numbers are not based on a study. These numbers are based on trying to identify what a developer would realistically be incentivized to provide, and trying to establish those points granted per feature provided in a manner that's going to be realistic and, I guess for the sake of repeating myself, incentivize him to provide that benefit. If those points, if they have to do multiple benefits in order to achieve those points, that's certainly something that could be directed. I think we start to run the risk that they would be less incentivized to provide those.
No, actually,
And we were
they're more
simply weighing
incentivized.
the balance of that.
I would beg to differ. There'd be, for them to save money, they're going to try to maximize the points, flat out. If it's saving money, they're going to try to maximize points. The question is, what do we want to do and assign our priorities to the point schedule? So if it's most important, for instance, to do 50% for sale housing, and you do 50% and you get 90 right away. Why? Because we want you to do that. So the question then becomes, is the additional biofiltration system worth 15 points? Is the bicycle locker, just the bicycle locker, I guess we're encouraging people to ride bikes, is that worth 40 points? Is that as important as building 50% housing at 30? So we have to then prioritize what we're trying to incent.
Understood. I just point out that the points granted, or that the number of points for sale housing is per unit. So in order to achieve the 90 points, they'd only need 3 for-sale units.
Per unit. Oh, that's nothing.
So I assume that we would want the maximum points granted to be 30, or some lower number, because if you have a project of, let's say, 100 units, or 1 unit, if I have a project of 4 units, 2 of which are rental, then now I've hit the 50% threshold automatically, and just by building 2 units, I'm already maxed out. So by building 2 of those units, then you're going to have, you're at 60 points right off the
60
bat.
points. Right.
And so I feel like people are it's too easy to get these points, I guess I feel like.
And also, I think one of the issues, maybe we can talk about this afterwards, but there's going to be different incentives depending on the size of the project. So if you're a very small project, you're not going to use certain incentives,
Right.
compared to a very large project where building 8 bike lockers for a giant project is no big deal.
Correct.
Right, and when we did the objective design standards, a lot of them had to do with the size of the project and the number of units. Do you remember that? So that's how we took that into consideration. So if you had a 100-unit, then you had to build X versus a 50-unit Y. And that's how we kind of did the point system. So every project wasn't exactly the same. It was a way to differentiate how many points they got based on the size of their project, too. So it had more detail. So I think something like that is a better way to go.
It's almost as if we have to reorder these in terms of what the commission wants to be a priority, and then set the points associated with that priority.
And add in the project sizes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you should take a look at that document, because we spent a lot of time
I
on
remember.
project size.
Okay.
And, like, you couldn't put in a pool if you had a small project, so we made it so people with smaller projects could earn their points in other ways, not the pool.
Right.
But incentivize them to do a lot of other things.
The other
Yeah.
things.
And also, I think I would like to see kind of maybe the ordering of these two, just the way it looks on the page, the ones that we consider higher priority too.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. If we ordered them by priority, which we'd have to then kind of go, I think this is we have to agree to the priorities,
Right.
generally speaking, and then we'll then have to agree to what we think, and of course, city council can decide what they want to do.
And I feel like some of these
I
are
have
overlap.
a question. Don't projects that provide affordable units automatically have streamlined processing?
They, as noted in the document, any project that utilizes housing legislation or mixed use are not eligible to opt into the community benefit project or program.
And isn't the number one incentive for a developer to be able to build more doors? The number of doors determines the profit because each unit is sold or rented. And so if my density can be increased as an incentive for community benefits, that would be the ultimate reward. I'm not sure that reducing parking requirements is a reward for them because most of our projects that we've approved exceed their minimum parking required. So it's not like they're looking to reduce it. I don't know. I think our incentive needs to be something the developer wants and wants badly, because otherwise they're not going to do these benefits.
Do you have a recommendation of what?
Yes, we need to allow them to increase the number of units
So density.
of their project if they provide for sale housing, for example, which is the number one priority in my book.
Okay, how does the commission feel about changing of the incentives?
You mean reordering them?
Well, I think just directly to what they get for meeting the community benefits.
Meaning the table 6.2?
6.2.4, I'm hearing that Commissioner Sherrod is in a disagreement that parking is an incentive if you do the community benefits. And she's saying that a better incentive would be to allow them to increase density, is what I'm hearing.
Which also serves the city, because if they increase density, you get more affordable units theoretically, hopefully.
Ooh. I agree in concept, but are we?
Can we do that?
I mean,
If I may, we can't increase density by what is already allowed under the municipal code, or it would trigger Prop A. And the impetus for this was that we know our affordable housing projects can get endless waivers and concessions. So we didn't want to give them more density or more, that wouldn't necessarily be benefit because they get reduced parking and they get all kinds of concessions and waivers already. So that necessarily wouldn't be an incentive for them. But I just want to point out the density issue, we would have to stay within the municipal code limitations. We had it in there when we were doing the mixed-use overlay and we had higher heights and whatnot, but with the removal of that, we are now subject to the municipal code.
so we can't grant any more than what's in the code?
Correct.
Without kicking into the Prop A
Correct.
scenario? And that is based on density, FAR? Or is it just floor area ratio? Because you can have 100 units or at 100 feet, or you can have 50 units at
It could be either or, because if we increased our FAR, that is an intensification of use, as well as if we increased, well, density wouldn't be allowed in these zones anyway, because it's currently prohibited.
So what happens when, okay, so density is not allowed because that's Prop A. You said density's not allowed, height's not allowed, that's Prop A. But Goodson's project goes on the Home Depot site, and I know it, but that's allowed because it's state law. So we can't do anything. Prop A doesn't, obviously, because Goodson's 7 stories, and other projects have come in at 6 stories, and clearly Prop A would cover those, but they don't because they're coming under state law.
Correct.
Okay.
So this incentive program, this is in lieu of adding these things into objective design standards, correct? Like, we added the tables that included a lot of these same kind of things, where we required projects to provide, in a table, a number of these, and then they got points in order for the project to be approved as part of the design standards. This is in lieu of including it someplace else, correct?
We would just be requiring all projects to comply with all criteria in the objective design standards. This is clearly just a developer opt-in incentive program to help us get some additional benefits that we would otherwise not be able to require.
Yeah. And your incentive are streamlined processing for timeline, and time is money, and parking.
Well, all of that information only makes me much more sure that we need to make a percentage of for sale a required element of the Encinitas El Camino Real specific plan for the El Camino Real corridor specific plan, because otherwise they won't do it.
But how do you do that?
You know, if we want that, we have to require it. And same with anything else we really want.
So before, before I have, either staff or the attorney respond to the for sale requests, is there a consensus on wanting to modify that in the specific plan? And then I do want to take this time to say that it is a little past 9:30. We do have a 10 o'clock stop time unless the commission votes to extend the time. And so I know there's still the M&D portion that you all had mentioned that you wanted to discuss. And so I'm wondering if we can get some feedback on this section here. And there's two options. One, give us the feedback in the order that you want these community benefits, your position on the for sale, and what staff can do is do the research on modifying it based on your feedback to bring it forward to City Council. Would be one option, or to come back, which would be the next immediate meeting. I know that we were trying to provide a lot of the information ahead of time to move it along. So those are a few things there. Getting close to the 10 o'clock time, thinking about what you all want to do, or can we move quickly through all the items up till 10 o'clock? And I guess we can talk in another 20 minutes.
I don't think we'll get through the whole thing by 10.
Okay. And then the next meeting, there are 4 items on the August 22nd special meeting.
And it has to go to the next meeting? by law?
Correct, yes.
I agree. I don't think we're going to get through the entire document by 10. Would you want us to take a vote now on whether we're?
I think we can go up closer to 10 o'clock and see where we're at. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I hate to be in a position where we're going to put this over to the next meeting, but and we can try to unpack as much of this as we can and see if we can get a consensus, but I feel like the community benefits section is going to take us some time. How does everybody feel about the for sale housing? Let's start there because.
Look, it's a community benefit option.
Yeah.
No one's required to do it. There's nothing we can do to require for sale product, is there, Scott? I mean, we can't force anybody to do anything.
I don't know how we could mandate that.
Right.
So keeping it as an option.
We're incenting the option, and that's probably the best that we can do. So if we as a group think that if you give us 50% of the units, or for all intents and purposes, to really incent somebody, you make 25% of the units, the lowest the threshold to get the most number of units, and you maximize the points granted for that.
We could also reduce the number of points they get per unit.
But if you're trying to incent the developer to build for sale units, right? Not make it hard for them to build, but encourage them to build, then you'd want to give them the maximum points for the fewest units. So you could say 25% of the units gives you 60, or gives you the 90 points. If you said 50 only gives you 30, you're disincentivizing them. If that's the priority of the commission, is to build housing, and this, well, city council can do what they want, but if that's what we're trying to encourage, then we want to lower the percentage and maximize the points. That's the incentive.
I don't understand why you think we can't require
You can't,
the mix of housing if we're doing a whole overlay.
I think Scott has said that we can't. Legally.
Correct. I don't know how we could.
unless it's city property, this is just my opinion, city can mandate what it wants on its own property, but you can't tell the person who owns a shopping center that he has to build 50% affordable because it's a market-driven discussion. You cannot I do not think you can mandate to a private property owner what they have to do on their property in terms of building. They can build according to the law. You can encourage them to do something, but I don't think you can tell them to do something.
But we do tell them they can't have, for example, an industrial building on this street. Or we can't have certain other facilities. So we actually can tell them.
I think those are zoning questions, not business discussions. You can tell them you can only build a 100,000 square foot building, not a 200,000 square foot building on the industrial site, but you can't tell them you can't build an industrial building. I don't think you can tell somebody they have to build for sale product. It's market-driven discussion.
Well, we're telling them a lot of things that we want them to do. And this is basically is a zoning document. It says that right in the introduction.
So I'm counting noses, and I'm also looking at the clock. I've heard 2 people against and 1 for it. I'm wondering if Commissioner Whitaker has an opinion, and if we do, then that could move it along.
I mean, honestly, I think within the scope of the project for that particular area, I think it's fine just to leave it as an incentive.
Okay, so I have another suggestion too. If there is more time that's needed on just the community benefits, we could pause on this, continue through the rest of the documentation for as much as we can, and then that way between now and the next meeting, you can all put some thought into the community benefits, and we can discuss your thoughts at that meeting.
That's a good idea. Because I feel like we have a lot of consensus in the rest of the document, besides the e-bike, but I feel like this is a section that needs a lot more work, but we can power through the rest of it, perhaps in the next 20 minutes, skipping over the rest of this section. Is everybody okay with that? Moving forward to
Yes.
public service and infrastructure? Does anybody want to start in section 7.0? Does anybody have any issues? This could all go really fast at this point.
I don't have anything.
Susan, do you have anything in this section? 7? Or Brett?
I don't have anything. No.
Susan, anything in section 7? Or 8?
No.
No, nothing in 7 or 8? Okay.
We do not.
So the 2 outstanding issues then are the community benefits and e-bikes?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, we took care of the roofs.
We took care of the roofs.
Right.
Yes, we did. We took care of the roofs. So let's go back to our e-bike discussion and what goals we want. What are our goals and how do we think we can accomplish them? For e-bike storage charging.
First of all, I don't have an e-bike, so I don't know how it works. I know you.
It just takes a regular plug.
Okay, so you can't really have a bunch of plugs all over town, right?
Correct.
That anybody can go plug into.
Well, you could, but
You could, but that seems to be not the right solution.
I don't really favor providing plugs.
okay.
I think it's a maintenance issue for us. And I think that individual shops or establishments or housing units would provide their own.
Right, do we want to make it something that they have to do, is the question. Do we want to make it something when they're developing?
Well, our
that they have
city
to
is
provide?
only like 26 square miles, right? My bike goes 47 miles on one charge. And most of my trips in our city would be at most 10 miles round trip.
Right.
So for me, charging isn't an issue, and I suspect it's the same for others who have e-bikes, because the range, even of a less inexpensive, like a child's model,
Right.
would be at least 20 or 25 miles. And their trip, maybe they take 2 trips in a day, at most 20 miles.
So if you.
So I don't see it
coming-
as something we need to provide.
But if you're coming from Oceanside and you're having a trip to Encinitas for the day and you come down and you run out of gas, you can go to a gas station. I mean, we have lots of gas stations. And you can say, well, my gas tank is 500 miles a tank. I'm never going to run out of gas in Encinitas. But you're not always in Encinitas. So I guess we're trying to encourage people to get out of their cars, trying to be less vehicle-centric. And we're trying to encourage them to ride bicycles. That includes e-bikes. People own them. People have them. So the question becomes, do we want to require businesses like we have is an e-bike, in my opinion, is no different than a car charger. We have somebody who drives their Tesla with a 500-mile radius or a 350-mile radius, and we were required to put a charger in place for the Tesla.
What about just making it, where's the charging, the car charging section in the objective design standards? Isn't that where it would be?
Yeah.
I mean, can we add in? I mean, a simple idea might be same number of bike chargers as you have for cars?
Yeah.
Charging? I mean, like
No,
some kind of easy.
That's the simple solution, is if you're putting a car charger in, there has to be some accessibility for
Yeah.
a bike.
I mean, all it would take is, on the outside of your house, your outlets have a little cover. I mean,
You still have to put sometimes.
you'd have to have your own charger with you, though. You'd have to bring your charger with you.
That's fine. My iPhone runs out and I walk into the coffee shop and I plug it in.
But you
So-
bring your own charger with
Or I
you.
bring my own charger with me, but I plug it in. So I'm just trying to think, people have bikes, people use bikes, we're trying to incentivize them. Why not have some kind of obligation for those users?
It's a nice idea, but the problem is that almost everywhere I go, outlets have actually been removed rather than added. Like I used to take my laptop maybe
Right?
to a coffee shop.
Well, that's why I want to put them in.
And now a lot of places where I take my laptop, you just can't find a plug.
Well, that's why I
Or there
want
might
to,
be-
but Susan,
Yeah.
that's why I want to put it in here so
So-
that they have to provide that. I mean, sure, we could probably make them at the gas station or
What-
not the
what-
library or the fire station could have them. But I'm trying to say, make it convenient for people, not make it less convenient.
Well, one thing I do think that we could provide is USB ports, because a lot of people want to charge their phone, the battery ran down and they need to make a call, or even to call an Uber or Lyft, maybe if their bike ran out of battery.
Right.
But a lot of places do provide USB ports.
But I think we're talking about, real quick, just trying to, I think, Chris, you had a great solution, just add, something to the bike to the car ratio.
But that's in the municipal code, I just found out.
Oh, it is? What does it say?
I'm trying to find it, but I know that it's typically 15% of the total parking spaces for multifamily projects
Right.
that's required for electrical vehicle charging.
Okay, well then, I just think something needs to go in, that's all. Too many people use them and get stuck. Trying to make it consistent with the code.
So we have no residential requirements in the specific plan because it's commercial land?
Right?
So then it's silent, and therefore we can go to our municipal code.
For commercial?
Yes, if let's say a residential project came in under housing law.
But what about a commercial project here?
Commercial project?
What's the EV requirement in a commercial project?
Understood. Then we would be able to refer, because it's silent, we'd be able to refer to the municipal code and what that says. And it's also building code requirements as well for new buildings.
Okay. That's just for the EV, though?
Correct.
EV, okay, so
Can
we can't really, there's no logical place, we could make a place, but there's no, you have to go to the municipal code for the EV.
Well, can you say, go back to the sentence and just add the word "and," where the car chargers are and
We
put,
can't change the municipal code.
no. I'm not changing the municipal code. If there's bike, all I'm saying is add, not changing the code. I'm trying to add a plug. Is that changing the code? If an e-bike charges with a regular plug, by adding a regular plug to the ratio of car chargers, is that changing the municipal code?
I don't believe that's in the code right now, and I did ask our traffic engineer if, what industry standard is, or if there's anything, and Andrew could speak. Do you want to speak to that, Andrew, so I don't misquote you?
Yeah, just said that there's no real standard for providing e-bike charging stations per square foot or per units that I've seen. It sounds like, though, you're trying to just provide an outlet that people would be able to plug into, as opposed to providing an actual charging unit. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's hard to believe that no city in California has anything to do with electric bikes, seeing that there's a bajillion of them out there. So,
Well, you may not realize it, but down at the beach,
yeah,
we have a lot of people who are full-time RVers,
right.
and they might charge other things besides bikes
No,
if they have an outlet available. And that's why
Well, you
there
all-
aren't these outlets available.
Well, I have a question. So the, where's the section on bike parking? Is there a bike storage or parking?
Yeah, it's
So, page 111, it's funny, I was thinking the same thought, the bicycle locker section.
Right.
I was thinking one potential solution would be to indicate that if your bicycle locker has an electrical outlet, then you get bonus points.
Oh, is that just in the, it's just
The
in
Cal
community
Green
benefits?
Code has bike locker provisions for certain types of construction. So if you have those bike lockers required, you could add outlets, I suppose.
Wait, so bike lockers are only in the community benefits? They're not, or bike parking is only in community benefits? It's not anywhere else?
Bike lockers are secure bike storage. That's
Right.
in the community benefits. There are bicycle parking standards in Chapter 3
Okay.
in the
Perfect.
development standards. Table 3.5 has parking ratios, including bike parking.
Okay, great. What page is
That's
that on?
page 60.
Thank you.
76, page 70 talks about shall be complemented with storage lockers and accessible storage lockers.
But I'm
with
thinking
bike
not
parking.
storage, but just people who are visiting a place who want to park their bike?
Right. Well, the gentleman showed some really cool things from Oceanside and Sandag, and to be able to access the storage locker, or the stored bike building, you had to have a card key access that you had to pay a deposit for, right? So if we had, I guess we have to have those things, because those require electricity to do your swipe card. So therefore, there's electricity in the box, and you'd have to swipe your card to get to the charger. So that's a way to control somebody from hanging out, plugging in for free. I don't know. Maybe it's too
That's
early.
correct.
It's
Those vendors who create, they look kind of like a greenhouse.
Yeah, no, he showed us some really
park
cool ones.
bikes in them. And the bike lockers in Cal Green aren't necessarily electric. They're key things.
So I have a question on the table on 60, because it does say mixed-use project, but technically, this document doesn't apply to mixed-use projects. So is it okay to still have it say mixed-use projects there?
Table 3.5.
In 2011, when Cal Green came out, those bike lockers became part of it. And we were all really excited, people who ride bikes. But they aren't electric. They were key operated.
The ones that he showed us were electric. Also, it's in section 6.2.1, the word mixed use. All right, maybe we're just, the world's not ready for, electric bike chargers, and you're kind of on
In
your own.
commercial spaces.
I was hoping that Encinitas would lead the charge and come up with an e-bike policy that would allow us to be the forefront, not just on straws, but on bikes. All right, so
Okay.
I'll drop the e-bike. We're just not ready for it.
Okay, so this might be a good time if we're going to be extending the meeting. One thing that I know that I would ask is to shorten the amount of time for the next meeting, because there are 4 items on the agenda. If we can provide staff with comments on the MND so that we can get through that piece. I'm not sure if there's extensive comments, or so if you would all want to consider extending the meeting for a certain amount of time to get through that item would be one request.
Is there a staff presentation on the MND? Are they going to, or is it just our comments?
No, just your comments.
I can move to extend until 10:30. It's up to you guys.
That's,
If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
I won't be supporting that motion.
You want to stay?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's
Is
either
there,
way.
Someone would have to second,
Someone
and
has
we'd have to take a vote.
Okay, so the motion dies for a lack of a second. So the meeting will end at 10 o'clock.
It's fine.
Okay, is there anything you can see us getting through? Just the closing portions of our meeting?
So what I heard was the MND is fine. We don't have comments on that. Is that true or no?
Yes.
Oh. So were there any concerns with a mitigated negative declaration? Or is it fine as
My main
drafted?
concern is increase of hard cover that leads to increased runoff, which causes drainage issues downslope. So although there were some provisions for mitigating it, the amount of development could mean that we should take a look at that drainage.
I don't have any comments on it.
Okay. So I don't think we need to respond at this point, but I think we've heard those concerns and staff can amend if appropriate, and if not, then we can explain why, and I'm seeing no, so they're thinking that we don't need to. And so there'd be that, and then staff will return at the next meeting with a revised section relating to that section 6.
Question in terms of how this works. Are we allowed to write my comments, and who do I send those comments to? If I can't share them with the board commissioners, do I send those to?
Oh, you have additional comments?
No, if I thought we were going to look at under the section 6 table and the incentives, under the community
At the
benefit.
next meeting, though.
Oh, at the next meeting.
Right.
So I can't do anything in advance of the next meeting, but to be prepared for the next
Create
meeting.
your own chart.
Create my own chart.
You
Share it
could
with
certainly
yourself.
provide information to staff as far as what your concerns may be.
Okay,
And then if they provide you any evidence or facts that have not already been publicly disclosed, then you would want to disclose that to everybody on the planning commission. But you could certainly speak with staff
all right, so,
between
I-
now and the next meeting and provide comments. And then whatever is discussed, and then you can certainly bring it
Share.
up. So
Okay.
the motion would be, if we're ready for that, would be to continue this item, to continue the public hearing to the following meeting, which is a special meeting, which will occur on August 22nd.
And I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
yeah.
I'm sorry, who made the motion? Okay.
Commissioner Ryan. Oh, I need to vote. Sorry.
We need to vote. Yeah, there we go. Okay, are there any future items added by planning commissioners?
So just want to state very quickly, the motion
Oh, yeah,
passes.
the motion passed 4-0. We'll be continuing this item to the next scheduled meeting. Any future agenda items?
No,
No.
sorry.
Planning
The
commission?
work plan, but we're still waiting.
Yes. Planning commissioner reports? Anyone have a report?
No.
None.
Okay. Secretary reports?
I do not have anything.
Excellent. Okay. That's it. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. And to the next scheduled meeting on August 22nd?
Yes, special
2024.
meeting.
Special meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate everything.
It